hands down, 5 years in this business, 95+% of owners that I saw promoted out failed in under 6 months. It is definitely not the heaven that they promote it to be at all. Ownership is 10 times harder than the field. Whenever you hear promotion about owners having money saved up, it's in their business account. It is not in their personal account. Cashing out of that business is akin to trying to cash out of a gang, right? Like once you're in, you're in. There's not really getting out. You're not going to have a choice. We are going to shut you down on Monday, and you are going to come to Ken or AJ's office, and this is what's going to happen, right? And that was the verbiage that was used. Now, if you're a business owner and you own your own business, how could anybody ever tell you that? It's very, very well known how much fraud exists in these offices. How many people can we get to believe in this cold? And then out of those people that believe, how many are actually going to be successful? And I would be very, very, very shocked if that's not the exact conversation that Larry and Abby have on a regular basis with their senior VPs and everybody else, because that's how the business is ran for sure.
Man, I fully intended on wrapping up this third series of interviews with my last one and get started on my office remodel. But your story was so powerful to me, and you have so much experience, so much detail that it needs to get out, and people need to hear it. We've heard from so many people over the past 3 years, a variety of roles. We've heard from owners, we've heard from admins, core leaders, account managers, whatever terminology you want to use. And you have a very unique perspective. And like you said in your message, it's very easy to dismiss a lot of people who come forward in these videos as bad owners or failures or people that just couldn't cut it. And you are not one of those people. So first, can you tell us, first of all, how long were you involved in this?
So ultimately, I was in almost 5 years. I started in 2014 is when I came back. And, I was in and didn't close down my business until the end of 2017, almost 2018. So counting my time in the field, coming back through, getting qualified, and then actual ownership, it was almost 5 years. And then I was in for about 9 months in my mid-20s. So that would have been, 15, 16 years ago, the first time. So I had close to 6 years total between my two ventures.
You made it to ownership, and you owned a company for about 4 years. And the name of your company was Vision Innovations Incorporated out of Sarasota, Florida. You made it to the holy grail of what most people get into this quote unquote opportunity to get to. And you were there for a while. You weren't one of these people that got there, figured out you couldn't do it, and failed in the first 6 or 9 months. You were in there for, like you said, almost 4 years. Yet, before we started this conversation, you told me that and I think you meant ownership, or this entire opportunity, is not what people think it is at all. So based on what we all think it could be, based on how it's been described to us in every opportunity meeting, how was ownership different?
So I think the biggest really misconception that occurs and because so much of this business is over promotion, it's from every level. When you look at it, even in the initial interview that I would say 9 out of 10 people experience, you're going to have somebody who has not promoted anyone out, who is probably fairly new into ownership themselves, less than 6 months. Maybe 8 or 9 months if they had a good promoting owner that gave them some cash and tried to help them keep afloat through the first beginning. But most of it, right from the get-go, you're being interviewed by somebody who probably has not even accomplished what he's telling you he wants you to do down the road. And that's really what happens. So it starts with the interview, and then as you're going through leadership, and you get brought out to Dallas, you get maybe you do some road shows and road trips and go to some other offices, talk to some other owners, but everybody that you're dealing with is kind of giving you this understanding that once you get to ownership, you've kind of arrived, right? Like you at least have staked your claim, and put your flag in the ground, and now you have some ground to defend, when that really is not the case at all. You're going to be running an organization for somebody else. And you're going to be really cowtailing what that direction is coming from upper leadership. Now, that's a double-edged sword, right? Like, obviously, you're getting direct coaching and mentorship from somebody who has done it, right? And that's great. I think in business for anybody, if you're going to do anything, it's one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got was, look, go find somebody who's really good at it and just steal from them, do what they do. And that's great. But if there's not a lot of ethics and integrity behind what those people are doing, that's a pretty rocky foundation to build on. And I think that's what most people's experience in smart circles, Cydcor, Credico is they get led to believe that, look, you work really hard, you get to ownership, you're going to get, your book, you're going to get incorporated, you're going to have your own, way of doing things. And maybe there's things that you don't agree with your owner or your regional or your VP. And now when you get to ownership, you can do it your way. Well, that's as far removed from the truth as it is. You are not going to do things your own way. Believe me, I tried. It was very difficult. And even being a top performing owner, I was top 5 out of 80 offices throughout the Verizon campaign. Home Depot, when I was on that campaign, we were, booking so many leads, they couldn't even fill our appointments. We were sending reps home on Friday and Saturday because we couldn't, Home Depot couldn't take any more leads. We were beyond their quota. Same thing with Inspire Energy. But, I, to be very honest, ran a really good sales office and not a great Smart Circle Credico Cydcor office. I didn't believe that promoting somebody just to promote them was the right thing to do. But they do. And, that's the misconception that really gets people caught up is you've got people that are probably not qualified to really direct, manage, and lead campaigns, certainly not entire offices or markets, that are being put in positions to do that. And if you're not ready for that, it's a pretty big hill to climb. The whole secret to this business, right, is when you get somebody in who's sharp, right? One of the blades, one of the people that you think legitimately could make it into ownership or make it into a key position, they smother you. You're going to be brought into the fold really hard. And it's tough not to see people with success. And they sound smart, right? Like I worked with some really sharp people. I'll be honest. AJ Gramlick was a really good person for me, and he taught me a lot of things. And he was 8 years younger than I was, and I'd been in business before. This wasn't like this was my first foray into trying to start a business. He was really good, and it was really hard not to buy, what they tell you hook, line, and sinker when, the proof is in the pudding. He shows up in your office in a Maserati. I went to Philly and visited with him, and he's got 4 cars. He's got Ducati sitting in the back of his brand new S10 that he just paid for, his brand new Silverado. It was tough not to buy that hook, line, and sinker, but you've got to be willing to promote and put people into positions that you probably know they're not ready for. But it's the whole law of averages they teach right from the field all the way up. It doesn't matter what position you're in. That's how they look at it. We're going to promote 10 people. We're going to sell 10 people. We're going to close 10 people. 1 or 2 of them are going to be good business, and the other 8 are probably not. And that's okay.
You talked about being a top owner. Like you said, I think you said top 5 out of 80 offices on the campaigns you were running. And to use your words in your initial message to us, you were an owner for almost 3 years on multiple campaigns, ran national calls on compliance and campaigns, was handpicked by a client to lead a new program personally, rewrote and developed a pitch for an entire division, went to multiple office visits. Yet, the one thing I didn't do is really ever believe I wasn't my own business owner. And that is a recurring theme here with all of these videos, is this idea of people that come forward. They work for somebody the owner who believes beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are running their own business, that they are an entrepreneur. And the reason for that is because they've been taught that. That's been ingrained in every opportunity meeting and every training session since the day they came in and taught back the 5 steps, probably, is that this is the ultimate goal. So, and you already talked about this difference between running a good sales office versus running a good Cydcor Credico Smart Circle office. They're not the same. And up until recently, I think the word sales has really been demonized in these offices. I think it's really only been recently where I've seen on a lot of the social media pages and even some of the job descriptions that S word is starting to be seen more. Still not completely, but it is starting to make its way in there for whatever reason. So, so tell me a little bit about this idea of like owning your own business versus what actually happens in Cydcor.
I think the best way to answer that is when it comes to the day-to-day operation, right? Like if you don't even have the capability of really choosing how you're going to recruit, where am I going to go get candidates from? How am I going to recruit and fill my office? What process am I going to go through in order to find people that are really the right fit? And I think that's the biggest thing that this whole entire business struggles with is identifying what the right fit is. The right fit for probably close to 4 decades has been somebody who is either underqualified or undereducated, struggling in a tough spot, and will be willing to do things that other people would not be willing to do for an opportunity they probably wouldn't get anywhere else. Mm-hmm. Sales is starting to creep into the game because they're realizing that with technology clients, with big, multi-billion-dollar global clients, you can't just grab somebody who's never done sales in their entire life, never done any of these things in their entire life, and keep putting them into new markets and burying the client. Eventually, you're going to lose the client. So, that word is starting to creep in because they're having to adapt. And I think people, not to use me as an example, but I think people coming from ilk like me are going to be much more prevalent coming into this business. People with sales backgrounds, people who know what the game is, right? Because commission wasn't scary for me. Like the thought process of going out and earning my own paycheck was not a big deal to me at all. I had done it for 15 years. I had done it in multiple capacities. To me, it's like being an athlete. You just get paid for what you're worth. If you want to show up, show up. If you don't, then you didn't. So I didn't care about that part. The hours didn't bother me either, right? Like if you've kind of hustled in your life to any degree, running your own business or, really being accountable for your own performance, hours shouldn't really scare you. And those are the things that this business wraps its good around, right? Is understanding those kind of mentalities. But, here's the difference. If I'm making a 30% or 40% commission on a big kind of luxury item, service, or commodity for a good or a business, I'm getting paid because it's worth it. I'm selling something that's actually bringing a lot of value to that client that's going to return business, so on and so forth. That's not necessarily the way it goes in Smart Circle, Credico, and Cydcor. A lot of that is because, and I think you've seen this from most of your interviews, especially if you're dealing with a product, you're selling their stuff. Larry Tenebaum owns multiple factories in China. And so when you're on a makeup line, or you're in Costco or Sam's Club or BJ's, wherever it is, and you're hawking today's pillow, today's iron, today's mattress cover, whatever it is, those products are all 100% manufactured in Smart Circle. They're just not, under a Smart Circle umbrella, but it's Larry's company, and those are the things that's how you're not running your business, right? Like if I opened a business today and I was in wholesale distribution and I can find toasters for 10 cents a toaster, right? We're going to sell toasters and we're going to be a toaster king. But if tomorrow I have ironing boards, clipboards, whatever it is, and those are cheaper and I get a better profit line, well, then that's what I'm going to be doing because I'm running a good business. But if I was manufacturing those goods and then I had a bunch of people out selling them for me and I was controlling the price of where it's going to come into the market and kind of overcome a lot of market barriers to entry that other businesses have to go through, that's not okay. And then when I'm putting people in a situation to really tell them that they're going to be doing something that they're not going to be doing. If you're running a roadshow business, you're not in business for yourself, period. I don't care. I've met more than enough people from that industry and that side of the Smart Circle and Credico world that you're not running your own business. You're doing what you're told to do, and you're probably carrying product you shouldn't be carrying. They're probably forcing you to buy inventory you shouldn't really have to buy because it's probably not selling. But again, that's all just so that the pipeline from where it really originates from, Larry and Abby Roth, that those things are actually handled and taken care of. That's a huge portion of their business. I mean, Larry, from what I understand, he's the one who brought Snuggie back to market, right? It failed originally, and then he went and bought the licensing rights to it and put it into one of his factories in China. And then the next thing you know, it's in Walmart and everywhere across the world. Well, why do you think he got that relationship? Probably because he's got 3,000 reps inside Walmart selling, Comcast, DirecTV, AT&T, and everything else under the sun.
You had mentioned that you had a background in sales, and usually, at least from in my time in the business, when we were doing interviews and screening people, and from admins that I've talked to over the past 3 years, a lot of times it's the people that do have the sales experience that don't get the job, either because A, they're overqualified, or B, they get into the office and they recognize, oh, this is BS. This isn't real marketing. This is something that is an MLM. It's a scam. It's whatever. So how did you perceive it differently with that sales background? And how were you able to, like you said, to quote you, I fully drank the Kool-Aid. What made you different than a lot of these other people with sales backgrounds that see this as something that they don't want to get involved in?
So, I think it's really two parts to that question. And that's a great question, by the way. The first part is understanding that most of these offices, because they operate with such ambiguity, such vagueness, right from the initial posting in the job posting board, right? They're putting an ad out and they're saying that you're coming in for a sports PR position, or you're coming in for this position, that position, full well damn knowing that not a single person applying to that position is actually going to do that, right? So there's so much of that misdirection over promotion and just blatant misrepresentation that the owner really doesn't have much of a choice, right? When he sits down for the interview, if he's got somebody who's sharp in front of him, he really is faced with one of two decisions. I either go ahead and pull back the curtain from the Wizard of Oz scam and let him know what's really going on, which is what happened with me, right? I knew about the business coming in. So when I sat down for my interview, I told my promoting owner, who originally recruited me back into this business, so to speak, but really I found it on my own. I was looking for it. But I made him turn his laptop around and show me his books. Hey, I want to see, what does your actual direct deposit look like coming in from the client every single week? Show me what your top 10 reps are making in your office per week. So I turned it around and I ran my business the exact same way. I wasn't misleading about things. And I think that's one of the things when you look at Glassdoor and you look at my business, I only had a couple of negative complaints, and both of those were actually from another owner being put into my office. And she was struggling. She was new. She didn't really know what she was doing. And so she would interview people I had already interviewed. She would, schedule interviews with people I already had scheduled. And that's where that blowback came from, because I didn't believe in doing that. I told people right on the interview, look, you're going to go door to door. We represent Verizon Fios. They struggled. Comcast was kicking their ass in numbers for a very long time in this market. And the other vendors that came in previous to me didn't do things in an ethical way, and it really didn't help Verizon out at all. So this is how we're going to go about attacking this. Now, we also did do special events for Verizon. I ran any kind of trade shows that they had. I put a lot of work in with Verizon directly to be able to open those opportunities up for my people. Because I wanted them to have that experience, right? Like, I didn't want them to have to go to the field and go door to door 6 days a week, 7 days a week. So we would have events, usually at least one a month, in which we were at a trade show, a home show, county, state fairs, whatever it is. And Verizon would pony up for the, all of the resource that would be needed to do that. I just needed to supply the personnel. But like corporate Verizon actually let people go, and I replaced those people with my people because they were getting a better return for it. And that's what that business is built on. There is some truth to it, right? When they talk at Dallas or any of these big national calls and they talk about growth with the client, what the client expectations are, so on and so forth, that's actually true. The problem is they don't actually care about delivering any of that. They're using it as a complete recruiting tool just to keep filling the funnel.
That doesn't surprise me, because I've talked to a lot of people, especially this year, who've said that. Sometimes the client, or sometimes the service, whatever, free government phones, whatever. It's a good idea. Collecting for charities, it's a good idea, but it's the parent company. It's Smart Circle, it's Credico, it's Cydcor that essentially F's it up and screws it up, not just for the client, but also screws it up because that's where the negative reviews and all that stuff come from. And yeah, that makes sense to me, because especially the tech people that I've talked to this year who worked on like T-Mobile, Verizon, and stuff like that. If you have a client that's signed up and they have a problem with their phone or they have a complaint, you're SOL at that point. I made the sale and, I'm done with you. As long as I make the sale, I'm good. Otherwise, take your complaints somewhere else.
And that's why when you look at the recruiting process, right? And I think Deja is a great interview, and she really has gone into it pretty well from the admin side of things, and how Smart Circle, Credico, Cydcor really go about filtering through the shaft, right, and trying to find the people that they really want. And again, it's not about providing good to the client, right? They don't care. They really don't care. I could tell you some absolutely horrendous stories of direct owners. I'm not even talking about people coming to the field in leadership. These are people that are running offices for Verizon, Inspire, Frontier, Home Depot. And the things that were being done were so far removed from being in the world of ethics and just operating with any kind of integrity whatsoever. And those things are okay. Sure, you're going to get called out on it in a national call, right? You might have a senior VP or somebody go like, hey, this knucklehead over here did this. Obviously, we can't do that. But it's lip service. It's complete lip service. Some of the biggest and best in this business have really, really screwed up. The Sears campaign was lost. The Sears home improvement campaign was lost 100% because there was an owner completely breaking the rules. They were writing just straight fraud business. And when Sears found out about it, that was it. They pulled the plug. If Sears wasn't struggling the way they were when that all went down, does Sears pull the plug? Probably not, to be honest with you. But Sears was already a dying business. So they were struggling so much in so many different avenues and arenas, they really couldn't afford the public PR backlash that came from that. So they had to cut the client. Verizon was very close to not having third-party vendors do a lot of these things because of the same problems. There was 2020 is another company. It's a subsidiary, I believe, of Credico. But when I took over the Sarasota market, people literally wouldn't even open the doors to us. It was really bad. We would show up in neighborhoods and, there would be an HOA president meeting us at the front of the neighborhood, trying to get us out of there, calling the cops on us, everything, because so many people had misrepresented what the process was really like, and that's what happens in this business. Even though they've got some great clients, I love working with Verizon. I had a ton of support from them. They were in my office constantly. We would go and visit with them. I would take my guys to the installation office and let them meet the techs that were actually installing things. So we treated it like it truly was a partnership. And we were really just a sales force for Verizon versus being a Credico or a Cydcor or a Smart Circle recruiting farm, which is what they want. They really want you just pushing people out as fast as possible. And whatever happens to get the sale to make that promotion happen, because that's what the business is about, right? Nobody ever asked me, even when I was a top performing office, right? And another owner would call me to network, or an assistant manager would call me, hey, I'm getting ready to push for my quals. Well, what's important? Not, pardon my French, not once did anybody ever fucking ask me about sales. It never happened. Never. It was, how did you build your crew? How do you get your guys to work 85, 90 hours a week and love it and enjoy it? What are you doing to build the morale of these guys as they go out and they make $800, working a 75, 80-hour work week at 22 years old? Like, how many people in the world do you think are actually in their early 20s are willing to work 70 to 90 hours a week minimum and make about $700 to $1,000 a week? And that's really, I think at this point, pretty close to where the mean is for most of the good campaigns. And I say good, meaning you actually have a legitimate client that has a real service with real customer base and real support. If you're not making at least $50,000 a year in the field, then you probably shouldn't be in the business. Okay. My gosh, much more than that. I think my average check for my 3.5 years in Sarasota, my average paycheck was about $950. And when we were really humming and moving, we were about a $1,350 per week average. That's really good. If you're in Florida and you're making $70,000, $80,000 a year, you're doing pretty well. Florida's economy and cost of living is, $40,000 a year is probably enough for the average middle American to make it. $70,000 a year, you're doing pretty well. 22 years old, making that kind of money, you're doing really well.
How did your pay change when you made that leap from field to owner?
So, as I mentioned in my email, my journey to ownership was probably, it's actually probably not atypical for this business. There's probably a lot more people out there like me that just haven't spoke up. But, I knew what it was coming into it. So like I had a goal walking in the door day one to get to ownership as fast as possible. I was running the Home Depot office as an not even account manager. I wasn't even a leader. I hadn't even been promoted yet. And I was putting morning meetings together, getting guys to the store, so on and so forth, because I was driven to do that. So my pay significantly decreased when I got to ownership because I was so good in the field and I had a really good sized crew. And when I got to ownership, and this is kind of tying back to your question about, how do you own a business and not own a business at the same time? This is a great example of it. I didn't pay myself based on profit. I didn't pay myself even based on my numbers in the field. And I was in the field every day because I enjoyed it, right? And I liked being out and training people and all of those things. So I had sales every week. I paid myself a $400 a week salary. And that's what I made as an owner for the entire time that I was an owner. I never increased it. I kept it at $400 a week. I felt like that was enough to pay my bills. And, that was it. Now, were there other things that happened with my money in my business account that probably were personal and not necessarily business related? I mean, everybody does it, right? Like the team nights. And that's one of the things that makes me cringe so much watching these videos is listening to the stories of all of these offices that had team nights. And like the owner wasn't paying for it. These guys are expected to go work 12 hours in the field and then come to team night and do bowling and like foot their own bill. I paid that every week. My office, we had team nights, we did all those things, but like that was something that was, I felt good about saying this is a chance for people to get to know me because it was legitimately on my dime. And that was hundreds of dollars every single event, and that was okay. I would put together competitions and, I took my entire office out go-kart racing on like a real, go-kart track where they train like people how to race, right? It was like $4,000, right? I had a blast. It was awesome, and those kinds of things were great to do as an owner. But unless you're really good at running your business and you really understand the metrics behind it, you're never going to have money like that to take care of your people. I think out of all the interviews, I can count on one hand the number of times I heard somebody say my owner got me this, or like my owner bought this for me. I got a new suit, whatever it is. That was an everyday occurrence in our office. I went over pay with every one of my guys every single week. There was never they just got a paycheck. It was, as soon as the commission statements hit from Verizon, we sat down, we went over it line by line. Hey, this is how many sales you had. These are the ones that installed. These are the ones that did not. And then we contacted customers, we followed up, and we saved a lot of sales. I did things on my own way, and it really improved things for the client big time, and for my guys big time. But again, it was very antithetical to the things that Smart Circle, Cydcor, Credico want you to do to promote people. That cult brainwashing is really important. It really is. If you don't do that, you're not gonna promote out because people are gonna struggle in ownership. Ownership's rough. It is definitely not the heaven that they promote it to be at all. Ownership is 10 times harder than the field. 10 times.
Okay, so you said yourself, and I think every owner I've talked to in this series has said the exact same thing, that when they reach ownership, their pay decreases, and sometimes drastically. I think Rachel said she made like $15,000 per year in ownership, which is asinine to me. So, and I know you said you were fine with that based on your break even and whatever, you still paid the bills and whatever. But how, as an owner, how did you justify that, knowing that you made less when you reach that holy grail of ownership, and advertise to people coming in with the script, at least, unless you told them completely different, that you get to ownership, you're making either 75 to 100K, or at least you're going to make a buttload more than when you're standing in the field selling stuff?
So I think this is probably the biggest trap for people coming in this business is they don't understand how to think in a bigger picture. And this is where the business really uses it against you. I justified it with my goals, right? Like, I had a teenage daughter who was about to graduate high school. I had two other daughters that, wanted nice things in life, and had goals. And so every day you're going into work and you're grinding and you're putting in, I was at my office by 6:45, 7 o'clock every single day, Monday through Friday. Saturday, I was there by 8, and I did not leave before 10 o'clock ever, ever. In almost 5 years, I could probably count on one hand the numbers of days off I had, if you want to call it that, because my days off were never really off, right? If I wasn't extra miling on a Sunday in the field with the guys, I was networking all day Sunday. I was calling every one of my team leaders, every one of their top leaders. I was, getting conference calls together with top leaders around the nation. I really drank the Kool-Aid hard. And that's how you justify it, right? Like at the end of the day, I didn't think about the $400 per week salary that I paid myself. I looked at my $30,000, $40,000 account in my business account and said, hey, things are going well. We're making money. We're profitable every week. 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, when I have 3, 5, 7 legitimate promoted out owners, things are going to be okay. And that was, how I did it, because I was in for the long haul, right? And so much of this business is really catching the pan when it's hot. And I think that's probably the biggest resounding theme that I hope people can get from all of these interviews, is understanding, if you really pay attention to what people are saying, this is what happens in this business, and this is the real truth. You have to make it, and you have to make it quick. You've got to be one of those guys that comes into the office and she immediately sets it on fire, immediately starts developing a team, immediately gets promoted out, and then immediately starts promoting owners out. And if you're not willing to do that and really be 120 to 140 hours a week about this business, you're going to burn out. You're going to be however long it takes you to burn out. Some people won't make it through the field. Some people won't make it through assistant management. Some people won't make it through ownership. Some people will get to promoting people out, and then they realize, wow, I just watched 5 people relocate their entire family and life across the country, fail in under 6 months. Now their kids can't eat. That wears on your conscience big time. And because the way the business promotes promoting people out and how to do it, that's the commonality. I would tell you, hands down, 5 years in this business, 95+% of owners that I saw promoted out failed in under 6 months. And were either intentionally shut down or, chose to shut down because they knew that they weren't going to make it.
Something that I hear from people who defend this business is that a lot of people are just bad owners for whatever reason. Maybe it's a mentality thing, or it even could be like what you said earlier. People are put in situations who are not qualified to do pretty much anything that they're being asked to do, especially not run a whole office. But they then make this, I don't know if it's a rationalization or whatever, where they say, I'm different than that. I'm a better owner, or when I get, if they haven't reached ownership yet, they say, well, when I get to ownership, I'm going to do things different. And it sounds like that's something that you were able to do with your office, at least for a little while, is that you did things differently. Like you said, that was kind of antithetical to what Cydcor usually wants you to do. But what is the logical fallacy there for someone who might come across these videos and say, well, Dan and Rachel and Alexa, you were all just bad owners. I'm going to do things differently. I'm not going to be unethical. I'm going to do things better so that I get good Glassdoor reviews and that I'm not committing all these atrocities that all these people are talking about.
Sure. Well, so, this is the thing about this business that I think really blows my mind the most. And it really blew my mind from day one. You attract what you are. Okay. So if you're coming into this business, and you can say you're going to be different all day long, right? But if you don't have an actual background of experience to lean on when times get tough, how are you going to say that that's what you're going to do? Because times are going to get tough. Even if you're the best owner in the world, even if you come into this business and you do everything right. And there's some examples. There was a guy, Joe Menino, came into the Home Depot campaign a few months before I did. And he was a very similar background, right? He came from business, came from experience, came from money, had already done some things. So he came into this business and brought an entire team with him. He got promoted in like a month to ownership because he like literally brought his entire real estate crew with him. and they just knocked it out of the park. And then he got promoted. He was, top owner for a couple of years. He's now no longer in the business. I believe he's now back into real estate. But you can do that, right? But that's what Joe was. Joe was already a successful business person. He had already been running teams in other industries for a very long time. So, he was going to attract people like that. But if you're somebody who just stopped waiting tables 3 months ago, or just stopped working a customer service job where you were making 10, 12, 13 bucks an hour, and punching the clock for 30 hours a week, what in the world do you know about developing and motivating a team when times are tough? Like, when have you ever done that? So what's going to happen? You're going to struggle, and then you're going to have to turn back to the cult to get answers and get solutions. And the reason that the bad owner stigma is put out there, or bad leader, or that person just negged out, they didn't do this, they didn't do that, it's all deflection, right? Like, at the end of the day, if people figured out how cult mentality brainwashed this business really is, they wouldn't come. They just wouldn't come. You wouldn't have people showing up right out of college going, hey, this sounds like a good opportunity. And it's scary when you think, my parents' generation, I'm 42, I'll be 43 in October, right? So my parents' generation is the boomer generation. And like, when I got into this business, my dad thought I was out of my mind. My dad owns his own business. He's worked for the post office for 40 something years. And then he has his own IT company during the day with a handful of clients that, he's had the same clients for 30 years, right? I used to tell myself all the time, if my dad just did what we did here at Smart Circle, he would have already retired. No, not even fucking remotely. If my dad had done what we did at Smart Circle, he wouldn't be in business anymore. And that's the truth. Most people are not built for what this business asks them to do. And that's why you see such a high attrition rate in ownership, is because they should have never been there. I was never one to false lead people like that. I would tell people flat out after their first, second, third week in the business, if I knew they weren't getting the ownership, I would tell them that. Listen, you're not an owner. There's a lot of things that you have really got to hone and put into place and work on if you're even remotely going to be successful at this. That's not the normality. The normality is that owner is going to tell you you're really good at ownership and you're going to be great and you're going to do all these great things. Look at all these things you're already doing, and just put you out there because they just want to roll the dice. They're just gambling. And it's okay to them. If you gave up your entire life, you relocated, you haven't seen your family in 5, 6, 7 months, you're working 120 hours a week, that's all okay, because if you pay off, Larry's going to make a shit ton of money.
You just mentioned about people relocating and not seeing their families. One of the things that you talked about in your message was things that you also missed when you were there, which I know we've all heard the saying, any one of us who's been in the business, time now for time later, you're going to miss things. You're going to miss birthdays and weddings and graduations and maybe even funerals, but that's okay. Because once you become an owner, you're going to have time late. That's your time later, essentially, which, as we know, and as you've talked about today, is not the truth, because anyone who's ever worked in the field or anyone who's been to ownership knows that you work, like you said, it's 10 times harder. So if you're working 60 hours a week as a field rep, 80, 90 hours at least. So, can you talk about some of the things that you missed, how you were able, and I know you already talked about your goals and your mindset and whatnot, but how were you able to justify that, especially if you got heat from, your support system, your family? Was there ever any encouragement from the higher ups to distance yourself, to maybe even, cut them off or anything like that?
So my organization that I was involved with, right, from Ken Weinraub to AJ Gramlick, they had been in the business the whole time, right? Both of them came right out of college, got into the business, and both were very successful. So the day in and day out rhetoric that they use, quite honestly, was very different than what I saw from like Jessica Irish's organization. And Van's organization over in California. I think you had one of the guys that was in Van's office on a couple of weeks ago in an interview. And Van was really good. He was somebody that I networked with a ton and stole an absolute ton from, right? But their rhetoric is much different than I think the common rhetoric that you've experienced in most of your interviews, which is distance yourself, get away from negative influences, don't talk to your family, so on and so forth. Now looking back on it, AJ and Ken were really, really good at reverse psychology. They represented saying one thing when really they were doing something entirely different. And so they never did that. They didn't discourage. They never said like your dad's an idiot, right? Like don't listen to him. They went the complete other approach. Well, listen, obviously your dad's got his experience. Your dad's done what he's done, and he's got his opinions on this or he's got his opinions on that, right? But until you've really been in this business, until you've really had to deal with these types of issues and struggles, it's just tough to really give a good opinion on it, right? So I'm sure he's got your best intentions at heart, but it's really hard for him to formulate an opinion on something he's never done, right? That probably is literally the conversation verbatim. So, it's and that's what that's how it worked, right? Now, again, when you're sharp, and somebody sharp is telling you this, it makes sense, right? Like in my head, I was going, yeah, of course. My dad's an electronics technician for the post office and an IT guy. He runs his own computer consulting company, right? He's never worked with big Fortune 500 clients. He's never trained and developed people day in and day out. He's never had to do 30 interviews a day for fucking 3 years in a row. Those things they were never a part of his life, right? So yeah, you're right. He's skewed. He's got the right intentions, but he doesn't have the right message. And that was really the way that it was played to me in most situations. But again, I was older. I was in my mid 30s when I came in this business. So I was a dinosaur. I was literally the guy that admins are told not to recruit, right? I'm the person that I'll give you a, so I don't know. I don't think anybody has mentioned this yet. Has anybody told you what a 110 is?
Yeah, I feel like one of the admins we interviewed talked about 110s very briefly.
So
was that what you were?
I would have been, right? I 100%
Yeah.
should have been. But I wasn't because, I guess I looked a little younger than my age. I carried myself very well. I had experience. And I was lucky that the owner that I originally interviewed with was brand new. He had been promoted for less than 2 months. So he was so gung-ho about trying to get his first owner out. He just saw me as a cash cow. He was like, oh my God, this guy's, this is going to be my first promotion right here. I should have been 110. But, it's a really cute way of saying no, right? If I take the middle line out between the left-hand side of the N and the right-hand side of the N, right, it becomes 2 1s. And now no just became 110. Because obviously it's not appropriate or professional in any way to write no on somebody's resume or application. But I can write the number 110 and nobody knows what I'm doing at all. And those types of things exist throughout this business all over the place. And they do that for a very strict reason, right? Like most people who come in and interview, if they have experience, if they've been in sales, they've been in management, they've done anything, they're going to look at this business and the average owner and absolutely run away screaming, right? There's no way that the average owner promoted in this business can interview somebody with experience. They can't. They're not qualified for it at all. And they're going to get chewed up. So they're doing it to protect the attrition. Because if those people were coming in and interviewing, your Glassdoor reviews, everything would just be, they think it's bad now. Oh my God. If those people were coming in to interview, this business probably would have died because of the negative publicity. So they shy away from that. I didn't. There's a guy, Al Keck, that's like a huge Tampa sportscaster. I was born and raised in Tampa. I'm third generation, right? This guy's been on TV since like the 80s, right? Like if you grew up in Tampa, you know who this guy is. I hired him on the Home Depot campaign. He lost his job as a sports broadcaster in Tampa. He didn't know what he was going to do. And I sold this business 100% to him. That guy's really sharp. He's really smart. But I didn't lie to him. I didn't tell him, look, man, you're going to show up in an office at 11 o'clock. You're going to go, walk around Home Depot for 2 hours. It's going to be super easy. You'll make $5,000 a week. And then we'll promote your ownership in 3 months, right? And by the way, I've heard that interview. I've literally heard that interview verbatim. That never happened on Home Depot. There was never an agent anywhere in the nation that ever made more than $1,500 a week. Ever. Never happened. I know. I was really good at it. I would do 30 to 35 leads a week, and my paycheck was like $700 a week because Home Depot never ran the leads. So, it never happened. But people would tell that. They would interview somebody and go, look, man, my top guy's making $1,800 a week on Home Depot. Bullshit. Never happened. There wasn't one agent anywhere in the nation throughout the entire Home Depot campaign that was averaging an $1,800 paycheck. The top leaders were doing $1,000 to $1,100 a week. Now, Verizon, that happened a lot. There were multiple times I had reps that were making $3,000 paychecks, take home. They're $2,800 check, take home for a week. If you're 22 years old and you can go out and make $3,000 in a week legally, that's a really good selling point. Most of the business does not talk about it like that, though. They're going to tell that 22-year-old kid, hey, you'll make $1,500 a week in the field. You're going to make $2,000 a week once you get into ownership. And then once you promote out a couple of deals, you're going to be making, $100,000, $120,000 a year just off your overrides. That's less than 1%.
Something that I learned from doing these interviews is for owners, and something that was never discussed in the opportunity meetings, is the two bank accounts, your personal account and your business account. And you have already mentioned your business account. As an owner, how much freedom did you have to access and use that money that was in your business account? Was it controlled by the VPs, or give us a little bit of insight into that?
I'm going to give you my experience, and I'm going to give you what I saw from the back end, right? Because again, being older, I would consider myself absolutely a top owner on the Verizon campaign. I set the bar on that campaign for a while. Developed a lot of the pitch, a lot of the things that we did for the client, and matriculated that out throughout the nation. So, I had a lot more freedom and autonomy because I chose to do that from day one, right? I kind of bucked the system really hard right from the beginning. So when I got promoted, I took a lot of control over that. And I kind of dictated how I was going to manage my finances and what I was going to pay, how I was going to pay it. So the hub, which is what this, accountant is really called, she was pretty okay with that. I didn't get a lot of, AJ didn't really call me up very often and go, hey, what the hell is this expense? Why are you spending this money? Why are you doing that? In fact, he would be directed to do that a little, and he wouldn't, because he felt like I was making good decisions with my business. That is not typical, though. Absolutely not typical. I was on multiple calls, and absolutely the typical thing is you're going to have two accounts. Your personal account is only going to be what you're paying yourself from the field. So again, that's 99%, right? Most owners are not doing very well in the field. Two reasons. One, you've been told for however long it took you to get to ownership that once you get to ownership, you don't have to go to the fucking field anymore. So why in the world would you then go to the office every single day? You're telling people in an interview, once you get to ownership, you don't have to do this anymore. Please get to the field. This is the most important part. You got to suck and struggle through the field. So once you get to ownership, you don't have to deal with this anymore, right? And now you get to ownership, and the only way you're going to get a paycheck is if you go to the field. That's the truth. Most owners are not going to the field. Therefore, they're not getting paid. Their business is barely breaking even. Most of them are borrowing money from their promoting owner. And that's a huge deal, right? Because if you're not a part of the network, right? If your promoting owner doesn't feel like you are one of his A players, he is trying to get you out of the business. They are trying to shut you down. They are figuring out a way to package this to get you out of the business because you're a detriment at that point. So the two accounts controls all of that, right? They're going to coach you that you only need to do your break even, right? So if your break even is $500 a week, then that's what you should pay yourself out of your business, and you should go to the field to generate that $500. The rest of your money should be going only to your business account, and you should leave it there. And you should grow that, accumulate that. Whenever you hear promotion about owners having money saved up, it's in their business account. It is not in their personal account. I promise you. It's 100% in their business account. And that business account is owned by home office. When I blew out of the business, I made the decision. I was just ready to go. I was so disgusted with myself for missing my daughter's graduation. So disgusted. And I was done, fuck, man. I can't believe I'm getting choked up. I'm sorry. It sucked. So I blew. I literally went to the ATM at 3:00 in the morning. I pulled out what the ATM daily withdrawal limit was, and that was it. And I didn't care. The rest of the money I let go. I didn't want to fight for it. I didn't want to argue about it. I didn't want to call Ken and go, okay, are you going to give me my 30 grand? Are you going to I didn't care. I honestly, at that point, I looked at it like, it's okay. That money is honestly my endowment to get the hell out of here and go home,
Yeah. You sent me a quote that you said was said to you a few times. And I have not met you before today, just through email conversations, and but it was, Dan, you're way too nice for this business. Which I mean, I think is a very interesting quote, because just by any way you want to slice that up, it speaks volumes about the people that are running these businesses, or if we call them that. So can you give me some context for that? I mean, I know you've already talked a little bit about how you kind of did your own thing, and at least in terms of your promoting owners, they were okay with that. Maybe not so much the people above them, but you were able to do it for a few years and you got by. So what was the context for that, and why can't nice work in this operation?
So it's twofold. The first is, you're intentionally fucking people over, right? Like, there is almost a 90% certainty you are going to promote somebody and they're going to fail. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know anyone in my 43 years of walking around on this planet who owns their own business to any degree that, is not all in, right? If you go open a FedEx franchise, if you open a Subway, a McDonald's, I don't care what it is in this world. If you start your own bead, making place with your 13-year-old daughter in a strip mall, it doesn't matter. Like, you're sold to that business. You're 100% tied to it. It's your life. They don't think that way, right? Like, if you relocate yourself and your entire family from Florida, over to California, and you fail in 5 months, it's on you to fucking get back. They don't care. Zero, right? So to me, it's like, why would you do that to somebody? Like, if I know that person's not going to make it, I'm not promoting them. I'm not sending them out there. Why? Just because you want me to? Because it looks better for your numbers? Because you're a senior, you're a senior VP or a regional, and now it's all about how big is your crew and how many people do you have promoting out, so on and so forth. And that's great. I think that people should be promoted out in the business, but they should be the right people. And I think that that's my hope for all of this that you've done with this Slave Circle documentary is, to be honest, man, I hope that the people at Smart Circle and at Cydcor and at Credico, they pay attention and realize that they actually could do this really well. Clients could get really good service. People could come into this business and actually get a real opportunity and have something that they could be proud of. But you can't lie to people from the minute they're walking in the door and have an entire business model based and predicated upon that intentional lie and expect things to continue to go well. And that's what sucks. And that's what it means to, you can't be nice. You can't be honest in that business. You've got to be willing to manipulate and control people and get what you want out of them. Indifference is something that they teach in I mean, literally bounds, right? Really shitty things happen. And you talk to anybody who's been in that business for more than a few years, like a year and a half, maybe 18 months, they're going to give you such a non-emotional response. It's unreal, right? You could call them and tell them, like, listen, man, I just, this person just died in my family. This just happened. Like shit that is actually really like, sincere, right? And they're not going to react. Right. It's going to be, yeah, no, listen, man, life hits you, right? Like, things suck and things happen. But guess what? That's why you're in this business, because if you just give up all of this now, right, 2 years from now, you're never going to think that was a big deal at all. And it's such a shitty way to live, right? Like, you're always waiting for tomorrow. And don't get me wrong, if you can go out and seize that tomorrow and you're willing to do whatever, beg, borrow, cheat, and steal to get there, you can get there really quick. I probably could have gotten promoted much faster than I did, and I probably should have and could have promoted people out my first year and been rookie owner of the year. I just knew none of those guys were ready. And so, like, why am I going to do that to them? That doesn't make sense. Not only that, Verizon wasn't really in a position to promote more out. We had a very defined lead list. So I would have been cannibalizing my own office to promote out. I would have put people into my own market. They would have taken leads that right then were being managed in my office for my guys, and it would have gone to that other office. Now, there's some positive to that, right? But that's a really shitty way to expand and grow your business. And if, that was your normality, that's why they run into these problems. And again, that's all you're just too nice, Dan, right? Like I wasn't willing to go, hey, you five knuckleheads, let's go put you up in the middle of, Detroit in an $800 a month, ghetto ass apartment where you're all sleeping on inflatable rafts and freaking air mattresses. And then let's go ring the bell and let's get you promoted out as fast as possible. Right. And then we'll put another five people in that situation. Well, finally, after 6 or 7 times of doing that, one of you made it and that guy gets a real apartment. Meanwhile, there were 50 people that blew out of the business that relocated their life and didn't get anything out of it and probably left the business with less than $100.
You've talked a little bit about your success as an owner, but also you mentioned things you noticed, and this is something that I've heard so many people talk about and is blatantly clear if you do a little bit more research, is the level of impression management that these owners will put on to try to convince people that they are rich and successful. You said in your message, quote, 99% of the people have false wealth and use either bad accounting and fund spending or blatant fraud to give the appearance. You mentioned people's names, how their offices don't look anything like you'd expect. And even when you went to these people's residences, houses, that there was always less than you expected. And this has been a common theme. We've interviewed people that said they went to their owner's residence and they were living with 4 other people in a 2-3 bedroom apartment. And they're supposed to be making $75,000 to $100,000 a year. So where does this impression management come from? Is this something that owners feel like they have to do, or is this something that is essentially told to them from their promoting owners and the higher ups that you always have to appear rich and successful, even if you might have $5 in that bank account?
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's such a hugely promoted ideal within the business. It was such an eye-opening experience when, I guess when I arrived, right? Like once I was no longer just, Dan Brown in Tampa, Florida, nobody really knew who I was, right? Like once I started getting national recognition and people started hearing my name in the upper circles, and, I made it to like my 4th or 5th Dallas, and I started really networking with people. You see how much over promotion really exists inside the business. And, you are around people that actually have made it, and then all of the other people riding the coattails. And so it's across the whole, right? Like you go to any kind of major event with this business, whether it was a Larry boat trip, whether it was Dallas, whether it was, going to Vegas for a Top Gun meeting for newly promoted assistant managers or owners, right? It didn't matter. It was the exact same environment every single time. You would have a half a dozen or so people that were successful, right? That made it, that they really did have it. And then there was an army of people around them. That army of people around them was comprised of nothing but people that were saying a lot of things, but none of it was really true. A lot of people that were owners, but were they really owners? I mean, they were an owner in somebody else's office. There was 5 owners in that office running 4 campaigns, and they have a team of 3 people, right? Is that guy really an owner? No, right? He doesn't even have his own building. And so, that's what a lot of these impressionable youth are seeing, right? They come into the business, they're in the business a month, they make it to leadership. Because they're sharp, their owner wants to retain them. So what does he do? He sends them to Dallas. Because now I'm going to go hang out with, 2,000 people that are all in the exact same boat I'm in. Their owner is telling them that they're going to be the next great owner. They're going to be rookie of the year. They're going to be this. They're going to be that, right? And it's such a self-reiterating proposition for that business. It just never stops. Most people, when you talk about owners, don't even have their own car. And that's the truth. And I hope people really hear that and listen to that. 95% of owners in that business do not even own a vehicle, let alone a house, watches, all of these other things. They don't have any of that. They don't even own a car. They're probably carpooling with their leaders. They're probably carpooling or taking public transportation to get in and out of their offices. They don't have money. Why? They don't have credit. They have no money personally saved up whatsoever. All of their money is tied up into a pseudo business account. And by the way, that money is probably not very much either. I would tell you most owners that I know of did not have money in their business account. Their business was operating on a paycheck to paycheck basis. They were waiting on their direct deposit every single week. They would pay their payroll, and then they would hope that they could scrape together enough to pay themselves a paycheck.
Having been out of it as long as I have, and having talked to so many people of various ranks like yourself, it just absolutely stuns me how someone is willing to put themselves through that and still lie to so many people about their success. I mean,
I'm going to be different.
Yeah.
Right. Always the answer, because I'm going to do it different. It's okay that this regional, this VP, this person, that person did this, because I am going to own my own situation, my own opportunity, and I'm going to do it different. I can tell you I tried. You can't. You're not going to be able to do it different. You might have some freedom. I posted most of my own ads. I didn't like what the national recruiters did. I didn't like that, we would have an ad out for, a PR person, when that's not what this person's going to do. I know what a public relations person does. That's not what this person's going to do. And I don't think it's very fair to have somebody coming out of college who probably doesn't have a lot of acumen or experience in the real world. And one of their first experiences is going to be going to one of these offices and interviewing. It doesn't fucking exist. It's nowhere in the building. And they're going to listen to this owner babble on for 10, 15, 20 minutes about this great opportunity. And like, they applied for a PR position. They came into that interview expecting to sit down and talk about maybe interning and learning underneath somebody for 6 months or a year, at an entry level wage, and not having a whole lot of stress and responsibility. No, instead, you're going to work 100 hours a week. You're going to have a shit ton of stress and responsibility, and we're going to brainwash the shit out of you. Like, that's such a shitty way to operate. And that's the normality in 99% of offices around Cydcor, Credico, Smart Circle. It just is. Again, there are some exceptions. I think that what I saw on the Verizon campaign coming from the Home Depot campaign was really, I don't want to say, it's like encouraging, right? Because I hope nobody is encouraged to go into this business. I hope that no one looks at this opportunity and goes, this is really a good answer, because I'm telling you it's not. And that's coming from somebody who really thought this was the answer, right? Like, I had already done this. I had gone into it. My original leader and owner that hired me in Tampa back in 2004, right, are both huge in Cydcor. Huge. They've been in the business 15 years. They're both loaded. They're such the rare exception. Such the rare exception. I would say out of probably close to 50 owners that I worked with, networked with, had a good relationship with, there's 2 left in the business. The other 48 of us are gone for whatever reason, right? Now, sure, you can say that we were all bad owners. You could say that we all just didn't do this, we didn't do that, we didn't take this direction, we didn't take that direction, and that's true, right? 100% that's true. The point is, the roadmap that you're trying to give people to follow is fucking bullshit. The roadmap that you're trying to give people to listen to and take people to the next level isn't the roadmap they should be following at all. It's just not the experience that they're actually going to get and that they're going to love, right? And I think that people who truly want to do well in this business, it's not that the business itself is a bad opportunity. The business itself isn't. It's the people within the business and how they operate it that makes it so bad. Verizon's a great client, right? AT&T, these companies are huge companies, and going to somebody's door and not having to pull out, a hairdryer manufactured in the 1990s and sell it to them, versus I'm wearing a Verizon polo. I've got a Verizon tablet, like, I've got all this Verizon swag. Like, everybody knows who I am. Like, that's nice, man. Like, I can tell you, as somebody who's been in sales in a lot of different capacities, when you have a brand on you that people instantly recognize, that's nice. It breaks down a lot of barriers and a lot of walls. But they don't recruit off of any of that. They don't actually have a real relationship with Verizon at all. It's a symbiotic jerk fest, right? It's just Verizon and Smart Circle getting the best out of it that they can out of each other, and not really caring what damage they each do to each other.
So that's something I've often wondered is, to what degree do these clients, Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, know what's going on and care, if they do care? And it seems like they don't, right? I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like if as long as they're able to get some installs and some money, that it's pretty much laissez-faire. Anything goes.
It is. So Joe Diaz was my director for the state of Florida for Verizon, right? So he was like the executive that kind of managed all of Florida. He was in my office all the time. We actually talked on the phone probably once a week minimum, emailed for sure once a week, and he was in my office at least, once a month, maybe twice a month. My channel manager for Verizon was in my office every single week. Every single week he was in my office. He would, be there for 3 or 4 hours. I let him talk to the guys. He was very involved. I actually almost went and worked with him. He's now a real estate broker. Once Verizon sold over to Frontier, he just didn't like the position anymore. So he went and did his own thing. But the guy's super successful, and we had a great relationship. That's not the norm at all. I would tell you that 90+% of owners I talk to spoke very unfavorably of their channel manager or whoever their point of contact was with the client, right? They said things like, I don't want that person in my office at all. If they come in, they're not allowed to talk to my guys, right? I'll pull my guys aside. I'll leave my top leaders in there with the client. And then all of my new people are going into an independent training in a back room, right? Because I don't want them to be, swayed. I don't want, negative outside influences to tarnish them. And that's very, very common. There's this huge separation and barrier. Now, Inspire Energy, when I went and got involved with them, we were very much involved with them day in and day out. They were in our offices all the time, and we had a great relationship with them. In fact, I had top executives from the company come to the field with me, and we worked on the national pitch for it. I was getting ready to start the business to business campaign for them, and be the first person on it, and let's figure out how we're going to make this successful. How did I get to that? Well, because when I came to Inspire, the pitch was, I can't believe the things people were saying, right? All of the nightmare stories that have come out from the Energy Choice program and all of the fraud that existed because of it, right? Those were all the things that were happening in every single office. I had an assistant manager from the top office on Inspire Energy come to the field with me for one day. After his 5th door, I looked at him and said, to be honest, man, I can't believe you're an assistant manager and that you say these things. I said, you realize you just told 5 straight people that if they don't switch to your choice of energy, they're killing people. You just told people that there's a government study that says XYZ. Where did you learn that? Where did you pick that up from? There's no government study. Like, this doesn't exist. Inspire never gave you that to say. Like, why are you saying that? Where did this come from? His owner. His owner thought he was cute, right? And I read this article 5 years old, and some Yahoo inferenced this one little thing about clean energy. And so now I'm going to develop an entire part of my pitch and go out and tell people that there's a government regulation saying that this is what should happen or this is what you should do because of this one little thing I read in an article 5 years ago. That happens all the time. And the client has no clue whatsoever because they don't spend time together. So it's scary, and Smart Circle, Cydcor, Credico is okay with that, by the way. It's very, very well known how much fraud exists in these offices. It's very, very well known how many unethical things go on. And I'm just talking on the sales side. Like, take the recruiting practices and all that other nonsense off the table. Let's talk about just supplying a service to a client. And you're going out and representing that client, and you're supposed to represent them the way that they would want to be represented. And that doesn't happen. It's definitely represented in the way that office feels is best for that office to promote somebody. Because that's what this business is. This business is a recruiting funnel. It has nothing to do with the product or the technology or the service. It's about people, and how many people can we get into this cult? How many people can we get to believe in this cult? And then out of those people that believe, how many are actually going to be successful? And I would be very, very, very shocked if that's not the exact conversation that Larry and Abby have on a regular basis with their senior VPs and everybody else, because that's how the business is ran for sure.
A little while ago, you talked about, I think you said 2 out of 50 owners that you knew are still there, and like the other 48 are gone. They are the two, like you said, are the rare exception. But if you drink the Kool-Aid enough, and you believe in this, like you said, if you believe in the brainwashings, you believe in the cult nonsense, you can see yourself. Well, if 2 made it, I can be one of those 2. I could be number 3. Not like these other fools, right? So, and having known these 2, what did those 2 do that the other 48 did not?
So, this part, I don't want to use names, because obviously they're still in the business, right? And their business is their business, right? I would never ever want to do something that would put an impression out there that would hurt somebody else, right? And these people are still actively recruiting and trying to do this business. So I don't want to, I don't want to hurt them in a way that isn't fair, because I think they're both really good people. One of them fully drank the Kool-Aid, and when I say that, I mean, he's been on multiple campaigns. He's been on multiple retrains. He's promoted out a couple people, but they failed. But he's still there, 7 years later. And he has, I think, 4 outside deals. One of the 4 outside deals is still in operation. The other 3 have failed. But he fully bought in. And what I mean by that is, if there's a new campaign that comes out and it's clearly trash, right? This isn't going to be good. Like, the guys aren't going to make money. I'm probably not going to be able to promote out on it, whatever it is. But like, they need a patsy. He's that guy. He'll run that campaign and flounder and not make a lot of money, and they'll supplement him. He'll get some influx from his promoting owner. They'll throw him some bucks. But he'll go through and he'll dog through, and then eventually the client realizes it's not a good fit, or Smart Circle, Credico, Cydcor realizes it's not a good fit, and they just shut down the campaign. Cell phone service was like that. The free government phones and all of that came after an attempt to just bring door-to-door cell service. Let's go out and represent Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T. Let's go door knock and let's see if we can get people to switch cell phone service, face to face. The charity and the nonprofit side of it brought the government phones with it, and it's a really bad campaign, But he's done those. I wouldn't touch those campaigns. I had offers to get involved with a lot of different campaigns. Most of them were not good enough for me. I only worked on the premium tech side because I knew that was a good client. I knew that at least they had services that would be delivered. I knew that the customers I would be talking to would actually get something out of it. I never felt bad about selling somebody Verizon Fios. Never once. In fact, I've had Fios since 6-7 months after it came out, and you could not pay me to switch to a broadband company. I won't even move somewhere that doesn't have Fios available. If it's an apartment or something like that, and they're like, "Oh, we don't have Fios," I'm like, "Okay, cool, we're done. I'm going to go somewhere else," because it is a far superior product to what copper cable does. But the people selling hairbrushes and pillows and things like that, like, oh my God, and he's done all of that. So that's why he's still in the business, right? Because to him, the product, the service, the client, none of that matters, right? It's just, I'm gonna toil through this grind as long as I possibly can, and then I'm just gonna cash out when I'm done. And that does happen, by the way. I do know people who have left the business with money. I do know people that they hit their goals, so to speak, and legitimately cashed out. I will tell you this though. Cashing out of that business is akin to trying to cash out of a gang, right? Like, once you're in, you're in. There's not really getting out, and it's really very, very, very hard. And most people, if they stick with it for more than a couple of years, they're in. They're not going anywhere, and they've kind of bought in. And that's him. He's bought in fully, 100%. I mean, they've relocated him multiple times. I the things that he's been through, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart for him. But he's still there. He's okay. He does well. I would tell you, he probably, at this point, last time I talked to him, he was paying himself a pretty decent salary. He had enough coming in on his overrides and residuals and whatnot that he was doing okay personally. I would be honest, the amount of money that he's paying himself in his salary for the amount of work and effort and time that he's put into this business, it's not even remotely close to what he should be being paid. If you've been in that business for more than 2 or 3 years and you're not, at least really close to $250,000 a year revenue, for yourself, probably shouldn't be in the business. You probably didn't do the right things. You probably didn't promote enough people out that were going to fail, by the way, but it doesn't matter. That's the metrics of that business, So most people should, again, catch the flash in the pan. And if you do, you might make it. And by might make it, I mean, you're going to screw over a lot of people. You're not going to have any quality of life. You're going to work a shit ton. You're barely going to pay yourself. And then at the end of all of that, maybe you got to a point where you don't have to go to the field anymore. That's the payoff. The other
go ahead.
person is somebody who honestly should have never been in the business. They should have been blown out a long time ago, but they're willing to retrain. And they will retrain you. If you're willing to stay in the business, what cult is going to let people leave, right? Like if you're willing to stay and still be a shitty cult member, they're cool with you still being in the shitty cult. And he literally he failed as an owner when I was in the field. And that was, 7 years ago at this point. And he's on a retrain right now. He's got 3 people in his crew. And he's in another owner's office retraining again, That's the normality. Most people retrain until they go out of business.
And again, this is the only way that I can interpret all of this information is as an outsider. Like I know I was in it, but I made it to core leader, and that was 5 years ago. Oh no, that was 7 years ago. So I mean, it's been a while, but I just can't understand a single retrain, let alone multiple retrains. Like I cannot understand the psychological manipulation that these people must go through for it to be normalized that, hey, we're going to shut you down. We're going to shut down your business and we're going to send you across the country and you got to do it all over again. I can't fathom that.
I was threatened with a retrain twice. Both times I fought through it. I just, I would tell Larry and Ken all the time, like you're never going to shut me down, right? Like that's never going to happen because like I'm just a fighter, like I don't go down like that. Like I don't care what battle or war it is. Like I'm willing to fight to the death. And so I did, and I would like bear down. I would go to the field. I would extra mile. I would do everything that I needed to do to not be put on a retrain. Because to me, like the retrain was pointless to me, right? Like if I'm going on a retrain, that means I probably shouldn't have been an owner to begin with. And I didn't believe that. I believed I should have been an owner to begin with. So to me, retraining was not an option. That's not something that's going to happen for me. So I fought it off. I heard owners crying, full on in tears crying in national calls because they're getting shut down. And you can tell their life is dramatically affected. And they're going to be in a really tough spot. And I did see a lot of owners get shut down and paid. I won't, I can't. And again, I think a lot of really bad things about this business, but I think there are some things that need to be represented in a good light, in a way, at least. And by good, I mean just a light that is actually illuminating it, not in a good or bad way. I did see a lot of owners get shut down where, they were offered money to walk away from the business. Hey, you're not a good fit. Your office has been struggling. We've loaned you money. You're in the hole. At this point, doesn't it make more sense to just cut ties and let's move on? Now, how much did they get? I saw one owner get, $1,000. I saw another owner get $15,000. So, I saw the numbers all over the place. I would say the mean is most people got about $2,000. Most people, when they were shut down, their account was seized, their business account. Most of the time it was negative anyway. But then the VP or the national would cut them a check for $2,000 or $3,000. It would just get wire transferred to them, and that would be their severance to blow out of the business and kind of get a new apartment, whatever was going to happen. But again, remember, 90+% of the owners don't even own a vehicle, right? So like $2,000, like that's not enough for anyone who is relocated across the country into a new area to reestablish their life. Right. So it's sad. It's really sad to know that so many of these guys get put on retrains, and their whole entire life is upheaved, and they're probably not going to make it out of the retrain, to be honest. I would tell you most owners I saw on retrains, they didn't make it more than a month or two. They would just blow out of the business because they didn't want to go through the field again. Again, you're told from day one, as soon as you get the ownership, you're out of the field, right? It's so far removed from the truth, because it's not only are you not out of the field for your own office, but like you're gonna struggle. That's the truth. I don't care how freaking good you are gonna struggle, because owning a business is hard. And that's just the truth of it. And motivating people and getting people to show up every single day and work 70 hours a week for direct commission only pay. That is not easy, and that's an uphill battle every day. And so you're going to struggle. Most people do not have what it takes to get through that struggle, and so they get put on a retrain, and they're living on another owner's couch, literally, or on an air mattress, in a living room, whatever the case may be. And they've got to hope that they can rebuild a crew fast enough, and that they can make enough money in the field that they can move into their own place, right? But do you think they're actually saving up money to move into a new place and to work on their personal life? Or do you think that they're probably saving their money in their business account because they're going to be getting reopened soon, right? And those are the things that people don't understand, right? Those are the things that I wish were highlighted more in a lot of the videos, is that you don't have control. Like, I had control, but I fought for it tooth and nail. and it was detrimental to me, to be honest. When it worked, it was great, right? Everybody was talking about it. When it didn't work, I was the poster child for, this is why you don't do this. This is why this doesn't work. This is why you shouldn't, and that's the business. Now they'll tell you, right, it's a beg, borrow, cheat, and steal business, right? Well, we're just going to emulate success, right? Like if Enrique's over here doing this and everything's going great, well, then now let's just do what Enrique does, blah, blah, blah. Look, does that work? Sure, to an extent, right? I can tell you that there were a couple of things that I got into the pitch, and a couple of things that I did, because again, I actually have sales experience, right? Like, I actually managed sales teams and went through real professional sales training courses and all of these things. So yeah, there are some things that we had in the script that were good, and that could really help. But could what I do day in and day out, could an average person just come spend a day with me and then just emulate and replicate that? Come on, man, that makes no damn sense. I'm me and they're them, right? They're their own person. They're going to have their own way of doing things. So the beg, borrow, cheat, and steal only works to a certain extent. I think the reality is that, and I think I put this in the email, I think all of that comes from Larry. And Larry is very sincere when he says everything that I've done in this business, I have begged, borrowed, copied, stolen from somebody, right? I feel pretty certain that he stole the cult model. He looked at what Scientology and so many of these different things do, and he's just emulated it, because you can't look at what this business does from the inside and not feel like you were a part of the cult. To be honest, I fully feel like that's what happened to me. And I think I'm a pretty smart guy, and I'm pretty independent, pretty rebellious by nature. So for me to like be a follower is not something that is a normality for me. And I definitely followed for a long time.
Going back to the whole retrain thing, you said that you were threatened, and I love how you use the word threatened with a retrain a couple times, and you've been on multiple calls. Elsewhere on this channel, there is a closing call with a former owner who was being, I guess you could say, threatened with a retrain. Can you kind of take me through that conversation based on your experiences? How was it presented? Was there ever, and probably the main thing I want to ask about that is, was there ever any questions from the person being threatened with it about, well, wait a minute, how can you shut down my office if this is supposed to be my own business?
So, man, that's such a good question, Alex. Okay, so no, that question didn't happen, but I'm going to tell you exactly why. Because you're indoctrinated from day one, right? Like when you're brought into the business and you're on an interview, the whole entire process is set up for you to become subservient, right? You're interviewing with a leader from day one. That leader is now your leader, right? Like you're called their guy. It's your leader, right? Like there is this huge ownership and possession that exists within that business. So by the time you got to that level where you're an owner, you've been answering for so long to so many people, and it's the same people over and over again, right? Like you're not going to question things like that. It's just not going to happen, right? It's going to make sense that the retrain is a logical solution because you've trusted this person for probably 15 months at this point, right? 16 months, like you've given your entire life over to them. So when they go, well, listen, I mean, obviously you're struggling, you're not promoting out, you haven't put a new leader up in 3 weeks. You've got a small team of 4 or 5. You had 15. You're not making the quota and the goals for the client. So, like, this is just business. This is just business. So what we need to do, and you see how they do that, right? Like it was all you. And now what we need to do, right? It's the build, break, build mentality. And again, these things, they're so indoctrinated into every single level of every conversation. That's how 5 years removed from the business, I could honestly probably go sit down right now and give a morning motivational meeting right from memory. I could do an interview probably right now and not balk at it at all because it was so indoctrinated. You just rinsed and repeated over and over and over again. So in these retrain calls, right, and I chose threaten very specifically because it is, right? It's based on your personality. So for me, knowing that like I'm the kind of person that if you come at me, I'm going to come back, right? Like I'm never going to just take something. Like if you come at me, we're okay. Like let's go do this. So they use that with me, right? Ken and Larry knew that that's the kind of person I was. They knew I was a former athlete. They knew I was ultra competitive. That I didn't care about the money. It was about being best, right? Like I enjoyed being at the top of a list. It had nothing to do with the fact that I got a $3,000 commission check that week. I didn't care about that because I have kids, right? So it's not like I make money; they make money. So it was just about being number one. It was just about having 2,000 people know who I was. So they used that against me big time. And on my retraining, the 2 times that it happened, it was a threat. It was, Dan, you're sucking. What the fuck? That's it. You're not going to have a choice. We are going to shut you down on Monday and you are going to come to Ken or AJ's office and this is what's going to happen. Right. And that was the verbiage that was used. Now, if you're a business owner and you own your own business, how could anybody ever tell you that? Those things are not mutually inclusive at all. In fact, they're mutually exclusive. They cannot exist in the same world at all. So it's a really shitty way of managing things and dealing with things. But that's the average call is absolutely going to be, look, here are the 3, 4, 5 reasons why you're sucking. And this is the reason that we're going to shut you down. And now this is where we need you to be this day. And they're going to come at you just like that. Now, depending on how you react to that is what's going to happen next. Most people do not fight back. I think the intimidation level that exists in that business is pretty profound. And most people, when they're talking to Larry, they're talking to Ken, Jessica Irish, whoever these, Mike, Albaceta, right? Like they're revered, right? These people are talked to like, they're gods. And so anything they say is just the Bible, you can't, right? They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And God coming to Ken's office and working with the number one senior VP, $7.5 million last year made, like that would be a great opportunity for me. So this isn't even a bad retrain. This isn't a bad thing. This is a good thing. And you'll hear people, literally that's what's coming out of their mouth. The reality is you're a business owner who just had your business stolen from you and you're being relocated across the country on a hope that this person is going to be able to fix your problems.
Based on your experiences, and this is a speculative question, but I'm curious just based on how long you were there and how successful you were. Take any owner of any of these operations, Cydcor, Credico, Smart Circle, that are in operation today. How far away do you think any of these owners are from being sent on a retrain?
Weeks. Every one of them. Vast majority. I would tell you it's the typical conversation, right? The typical conversation that's occurring between a regional and a VP is going to be, okay, I've got 10 offices. 2 of them have promoted out. The other 8 have not promoted out in 3 months, 5 months. What do I do? Right. And then the VP is going to go, okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to identify out of your owners, which ones are A, which ones are B, which ones are C, which ones are D, right? Where are these guys at? Are these, are these guys and girls somebody who just doesn't know, right? They have the ability, they've got the potential, they've got the desire, but they just don't have the knowledge to be able to execute what they need to execute, right? So in that situation, what's likely going to happen is either a top owner or a regional is going to go and road trip to that office, and they're just going to spend a couple of weeks with that owner and see what that owner is doing day in and day out, right? And it probably is a very easy fix, right? It probably is something that is to the outside looking in is going to be really dumb simple, right? Oh, well, here's your problem, man. You stop being in atmosphere every single day. Now you're doing interviews the entire time your leaders are inside atmosphere, and your top 3 leaders aren't really committed. So your training class is crap. Your atmosphere sucks, right? And now it's just a matter of getting that owner back into atmosphere every single day for a few weeks, and then those problems will kind of fix themselves out. A lot of other times it's because the guy just shouldn't have been there to begin with. That guy or girl just should have never been an owner. And so you can see, I visited offices where, you can tell as soon as you walk in the door that the place is just a cesspool. It's not clean. Everybody looks frazzled. Everybody's unkempt. The admin's running around like a chicken with a head cut off, making calls, the phone nonstop ringing, and there's just no control. It's if you can get to a state of entropy in these offices, you can do okay, right? You have to have a very controlled chaos. And most owners don't have that kind of capability. And it's really not something that's trained or taught. Like, unless you've actually gone and done it on your own, or you've trained with somebody, or you've been in a management experience before, which again, we all know this business is not going to find those people. Why? Because they're 110 out. They're overqualified. So, it's a self-perpetuating problem that they face. And that's what you see in most of those offices. And that's the conversations that occur. It's a very hostile environment, right? It's because you own a business, right? There's no HR, right? So if they talk to you, however they talk to you, who are you going to go complain to? Where are you going to go file that for? You're going to go contact some attorneys and go drag them into small claims court about the way they talk to you? Like, it's never going to happen. There's no real accountability. So I've heard the worst of the worst. I heard owners absolutely belittled and ripped apart. And again, not for business mistakes, not for, not being a great owner. They were attacking their character, and they were really attacking them as a person. And the reality of it is, it's intentional. They were trying to blow that person out of the business. They wanted that person to get upset and just go, you know what, I'm done. You're right. And I'm not, I shouldn't go on a retrain because I'm not going to get anything out of the retrain. So at this point, the best thing to do is you're probably right. Let's shake hands, let's cut ties, and let's move on. And that was the stated goal, right? That they're going into the phone conversation with that intention. We're either going to blow this person out, or they are going to so full-heartedly buy in hook, line, and sinker that they're going to be willing to go on this retrain. And then, really we're getting a whole other field rep out of them, and we can make the money that we make off of them, which is the reality of it, right? Like, Smart Circle is taking such a huge piece of the pie, and so is Cydcor, and so is Credico, and they do a really good job of hiding those metrics from the owners. Most owners really don't understand how the flow through happens. They have no clue. It blew my mind the number of owners that I knew in the roadshow division that did not even know that they were selling Larry Tenebaum products. They had no idea that the products were coming from Smart Circle directly. No clue. And it's like, this is your business, man. Like, how do you not know this? I know everything there is to know about telecom. I know everything there is to know about Verizon, Comcast, Spectrum, Bright House. What their promotions are, what do customers say about them? What are the things that customers like and don't like? Like, this is my business. I put the time in to learn all of that. And I preach that constantly to owners. Most owners don't care, man. They have no idea that, that my pillow is like Larry shit. They had no.
I mean, usually if the box that your crap comes in says Smart Circle or Innovage, that's a pretty good, come on, man. I wasn't even an owner and I knew that was Smart Circle products.
Correct, 100%. But it's like I remember, I don't know if you recall the guys at the gas stations that were doing the like spray on wax for your tires and all of that, right?
Yep.
Like that. Larry owns all of that. He owns the manufacturing for that. So, these guys that are out there peddling this wax, right? And like wax was a huge campaign for like, I remember like there was like an 18-month period that like, if you had somebody who you knew wasn't good enough to run a big campaign, right? The big boy campaigns, the direct TVs, the Verizons, where you actually really had to teach people and train people some real techniques. The wax campaign was an easy one. And I know a lot of owners who got promoted onto that campaign because, it was a good fit, right? They can manage 10 to 12 people to show up every day and go hang out at 7-Eleven and, sling their 30 cans of wax and move on, right? And that guy will be in ownership for 6 months, 9 months, 10 months. He won't make any money. She won't make any money. But Larry absolutely sold, 5,000 cans of wax.
Something that I'm curious about, just because I've spoken to so many people from the different parents, Smart Circle, Credico, Cydcor. What is the relationship between these guys?
So let me tell you what I know for a fact. What I know for a fact, there was a gentleman named Murray Reinhart way back in the 70s that in Canada had a direct supply door-to-door company. And from my understanding, Larry Tenebaum and Avi Roth were both in that office, that they both were promoted out by Murray Reinhart. Avi Roth owns Cydcor, Larry owns Smart Circle. So the story that's told is that they both came from the field and, made their way up. I have my doubts about that. There's a lot of holes in the timeline and story. And then it's like anything, right? Like it's crazy. And again, this comes into the cult, right? Like cults have to have urban myths. They have to have legends. They have to have things that exist that like the general public and the people that are coming and going in and out of the cult, right, have reference to. I fully believe this is one of those. I don't think that Larry ever was in the field. Honestly, I don't think him or Avi Roth ever saw the field. I don't believe that's what happened. I don't believe that Smart Circle grew to the size it did and that Larry ended up living 2 doors down from Oprah, right, in one of his many houses because he sold irons and pots and pans out of door to door in Canada back in 1976. I just don't believe it. It's a big tale to buy, right? I think more likely is Murray Reinhart, Avi, Larry, and these guys probably, were just venture capitalists, and they put together a business model that made sense, and they were able to procure either manufacturing for cheap goods or some small third-party contracts that were able to kind of kickstart this, sometime circa mid-80s. But, from what I understand, Larry for sure is the owner of Smart Circle, right? And then he also is the owner of multiple factories in China. And Smart Circle is a global company. Cydcor is a global company at this point. They've transitioned over the last decade to be much more service driven with client relationships and providing, that kind of service. But they got their roots for sure peddling, Chinese manufactured goods out of the manufacturing companies that they owned. And then they just came up with a really good pyramid MLM scheme to get it sold. Instead of going to distributors and wholesalers, they just hired people with, peanuts on the dollar. And gave them this opportunity that they can become an owner, right? When you're never really an owner. It's really hard. I mean, there were some parts of my life that I felt like I was an entrepreneur and I felt like I was an owner, just like I did when I actually ran real businesses. But there were a lot of parts of it that, yeah, your hands are completely tied, and it's tied directly by Cydcor and Smart Circle.
You even use the words pyramid scheme, which I think to any outsider who looks at the business structure, it's a pyramid scheme. I mean, legally, maybe not, but it is. I mean, go back to there's a scene in The Office where Jim outlines what Michael's trying to sell with the cell phone cards or whatever, and he draws the pyramid. You do the exact same thing with how Cydcor and Smart Circle operate. There's your pyramid scheme, man. You know, um, and I get a lot of people defend this, who say, no, it's not a pyramid scheme because we don't make you purchase any product, you know, but that's not at all what a pyramid scheme is. If you look at it's all recruiting, man. You know, anywhere. I've never worked for any place other than Smart Circle, where your job, your placement in this opportunity, the privilege to pursue this opportunity is based on your ability to recruit other people under you to fill out the base of the pyramid. Never, ever, ever seen anything else like that. And yet you say, oh, this isn't a pyramid scheme.
Yeah. It's really, I think the true irony of all of this is, remember that the whole pyramid scheme stigma, right, came from the people going door to door back in the 70s and 80s selling Bibles and encyclopedias and, brooms. And well, that was fucking Smart Circle, right? Like, they're the originators of it. So, like, I don't understand how, now 30 years later, we're going to try and look at this and go, well, we're not that. What do you mean? Like, you literally created the freaking Urban Dictionary definition for it. Like, it is based on you. So, yes, you're a pyramid scheme, right? Now, what does that mean? Well, yeah, at the end of the day, they're not asking you to buy Verizon Fidos, right? They're not asking you to buy the really shitty bamboo pillow that, is horrible, right? Like, they're not asking you to buy that as a direct person. So, yeah, technically we're not a pyramid scheme, right? It's not Amway of 1985. But I have friends who are in MLMs, right? And like, it works and all of these things, right? And I tell them all the same thing. I'm like, yeah, you really are getting scammed, because like, they tell you directly you're getting scammed and you're still buying into it. I don't get it. But Smart Circle, Credico, Cydcor doesn't do that, but it is, right? Like, it's 100% a pyramid scheme. And the difference is, at least in their eyes, right? This is their defense of it. At least you're working directly underneath somebody who's going to help you get to the next level, right? Sure, it's a pyramid scheme by definition, right? But it's just because the design is the best fit for it, right? This is what makes our business successful. The reality of it is, it's not, right? Because how many people are actually getting mentored? Very, very few. You can see the common theme throughout the interviews. And again, I will say, some of the interviews are people that should have never been in the business in the first place, right? Like, those people should have never been hired. That owner should have interviewed them, pulled away from that interview that this person's not a fit for this, right? And then moved on. They don't. They of course try to recruit and hire everybody and make them a fit for the business. But it's most people shouldn't do this. They're not cut for it. You have to be very, very cutthroat minded, and not in a good way, right? Like, you have to be willing to tell people you're there for them, mentor them, coach them, care about them, right? You're going to develop a real personal relationship with this person, knowing 90% of them are going to fail. 90% of them are not going to make it out of ownership. They're not even going to make it to ownership. Probably not even going to make it to leadership, to be honest.
You've mentioned the name Larry Tenebaum a few times. Anyone who has worked for Smart Circle knows Larry. And going back to what you said, I remember the myth, since we'll call it a myth now, of Larry going door to door. One of the people I worked with, Kim York, formerly Kim Paul, she is kind of a legend for probably not the right reasons in this business, but she changed her company name a few years ago. I'm assuming she went on a retrain, but she probably doesn't tell her recruits that. But separate story. I remember the myth too, that Larry, he started the business selling. I think how it was mentioned to us was he was selling crap in a bag door to door. It might have been pots and pans, I don't know. And he lived down the street. He lived next door to Kobe Bryant. That was the line that we were sold when we were in the business. So, whatever. But yeah, so I met him. I actually have a photograph with him, because when I went to Dallas, yeah, he is like the god of gods. He is as if L. Ron Hubbard would walk in to a Scientology convention. You know, you want to make sure that if you see Larry working out in the hotel gym, that you grab the treadmill next to him, and that if you see him sit down at the restaurant, you want to grab that seat at that table. You know, you want to make sure you reserve in that seat, because this is L. Ron Hubbard, man. This is it. He's going to give you the answers. You're going to get a spiritual awakening. And in your email to us, you identified him as a cult master, which I love that. I think that's a great way to identify him. And you've said this already, but I'll just reiterate it using your words. He says all the time, everything he has done, he's copied, cheat, and stole, which I remember very clearly in our opportunity meetings. They always say this is a copy, cheat, and steal business. I heard that so many times. You know, tell us a little bit about Larry. I know you've mentioned him a few times before, but you know, this cult master, this god of Smart Circle, the brains behind the operation. Who is Larry Tenebaum?
I think he's an average guy, to be honest. Like, you know, when you spend any real time with Larry, he's pretty actually down to earth. You know, he was pretty humble. And when I think that's, now looking back on it, I think it's honestly all an act. You know, I think he's probably a totally different person behind who we get to meet him as, you know, being a part of the business, you know, because he's always on stage, you know, and it's kind of like an actor, right? Or an athlete. Like at this point, Michael Jordan kind of put on the map that, like, if you're an actor, you have to have or an athlete, you have to have a brand, right? Like Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan 24/7. Kobe was Kobe 24/7. I think Larry is the same thing. I think Larry is Larry, you know, which is the Smart Circle Larry, you know, all the time now. And I think his family probably doesn't even get the real Larry very much anymore. But he's always on stage, always. And, you know, when you are in the business for any amount of time, you know, where you're at assistant manager level or higher, right? And you actually spend time with people, you'll see that like everybody's a carbon copy of him. Right. Like you can listen. It actually blew my mind when I was listening to the interviews. And I think it was Rachel, right? She was the roadshow owner that was Rookie of the Year out of Texas and all of that. You can hear her dialect, her inflection, her tonality, all of it is like listening to Larry talk in Dallas, or listening to Larry talk on a national call, or listening to Larry, you know, talking even a one-on-one call. Right. And then you can hear the same thing from the nationals and the VPs and the consultants and the NCs. Like they talk just like him. They use the exact same tone, the exact same inflection, the exact same sayings. You know, that's why there's so many things that become, you know, like the words within the business, right? Juice and all of these things. And it's actually kind of funny. Like, again, we were like this separate entity inside Smart Circle, right? Like the service guys that were working on Verizon Fios, we were like a brand new campaign, and there was some fundamental changes to the way things were being done because guys were actually making money, like actually making money. The guys in the field, right? Field reps are making, you know, $2,500, $3,000 paychecks, right? Take home. So things were kind of changing a little bit, and so there were a lot of different things said within our campaign. And some different mentalities. You know, people started actually talking about commission only. People actually started talking about sales. You know, we would sit down as owners and talk about interview practices, you know, and what are you saying in your interviews? And like the Verizon guys were actually starting to kind of put out there what we really do, right? At least from the field standpoint, you know, because I think there's nothing worse than, you know, you give a leader who's already dealing with a lot of things, right? They're working commission only. You know, they're trying to make paychecks. They're trying to train people. They're doing really your job as an owner, right? Like the leaders spent way more time with the guys than I ever did. You know, they're in the field with them every day. And you give them this person that you interviewed and you told them about a PR position or this or that. And then all of a sudden they're going and knocking doors in a neighborhood. Like that poor leader, man. Like imagine being that guy, right? And now all of a sudden you've got this person coming on an interview with you and they're like, wait a minute, you go door to door? You sell shit? Like what? You know, and like it's terrible, but that's the normality. And I think that's Larry, right? I think Larry has done a really good job of putting together a package intended to do what he wants it to do. And again, I use that term good in a very liberal basis, right? It's just good for him, you know, but he begged, borrowed, cheated, copied, stole that. I guarantee it. And I think anybody who does any time and research into psychology and how you effectively manipulate people and how you can effectively get people to do things that they might necessarily not do. He follows all of that. These are pretty concrete systems that are in place that kind of direct the way that Smart Circle and Cydcor do things. And I would tell you, yeah, my gut check is at this point, it's a cult, man. And he stole this from the cult, and he is that cult leader, right? Like anytime you saw Charles Manson, he was Charles Manson. Anytime you see Larry, he's Larry. And I did all of those things you talked about. I ran on the treadmill next to him at 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. I spent time at his house. I remember, there was a wine delivery at his house that's down from Kobe and Oprah, right? And literally you go through like 5 gates to get to his house, which is finally at the very top of this hill in California. And it's beautiful. Like, don't get me wrong, it's beautiful. He had a $15,000 wine delivery for 4 bottles of wine. It's 4 bottles. It's 15 grand. He probably had millions of dollars in wine in his wine basement at the bottom of his house. Is that what drove and motivated him to develop a business that pretty much lies to people from day one to get, what he needs? I didn't get that feeling from him. I didn't. I actually spent a good amount of time talking to him, and I actually felt like he was really genuine. Now looking back on it, it's all a charade. It's all a charade. I think Larry's helped a lot of people. I think the business has helped a lot of people. But I would tell you the amount of people it's hurt so far outweighs the amount of people it's helped. It's not even worth talking about. The number of people that actually made it through that business, it's infinitesimal. The people that I knew that were at the top, right? They weren't good people. They weren't. The things I saw them do and the things I heard from them and getting a kind of peek behind the curtain, so to speak, right? Like, they weren't good people. Is Larry one of those people? I don't know, man. I don't know. It's hard. I try to look at things that aren't directly tied to try to formulate opinions on things like that. And what I saw from Larry's wife, what I saw from Larry's kids, what I saw from Larry's brother, who was involved in the business all the time. He was on all kinds of trips and things like that. And the guy never did anything. Like, I never once talked to him about the business. He never once gave information about the business. He didn't know anything. It seemed like Larry genuinely took care of those people. But it's pretty hard to look at this business and not go, yeah, this is Tom Cruise and Scientology. It is in every way. And I've met Scientologists. Again, I live in Tampa, Florida, right? We have an entire base here. So like, I've met many of them. And yeah, everything I see inside Smart Circle is exactly what I see from people who are in Scientology. It's the exact same thing. I mean, you couldn't tell them different, right? If I took the names and the pictures off and I just talked about the things that were done between the people in each cult, you would never be able to tell them apart. You only know that they're different because one happens to happen in a business world and the other one happens in religion. But they're the exact same thing, hands down.
Yeah, I think you bring up an excellent point in contrast there, because you could argue that obviously Smart Circle, Cydcor, they've helped a certain number of people. You could argue Scientology has helped a certain number of people. You could argue Jonestown, Heaven's Gate has helped a certain number of people. But what about the 1,000 people that killed themselves in Jonestown? What about the people that have died in Scientology because they were denied psychiatric care? What about the people whose lives have been ruined by Smart Circle and Cydcor because they've been lied to from the top? I mean, they may have never met a Larry Tenebaum or a Gary Paulson or any of these bigwigs, but like you said, everything comes from the top. It's just like any mass media company or any other business. Everything comes from the top. So it might be your owner, it might be my owner, it might be whoever's owner in any city, but it all comes from somewhere. And it's just like you said, any cult. Anything that the Scientologists know, well, that comes from David Miscavige, which comes from reportedly what L. Ron Hubbard told him, right? Anything that was believed in Jonestown, well, that came from Jim Jones. Like you mentioned Charlie Manson. Anything that the Manson family believed, well, it had to come from somebody. It came from Charlie Manson, right? Now, I'm not saying that Larry Tenebaum's a murderer. Let's not splice words here, but I mean, has his cult that he has created harmed a hell of a lot more people than it's helped? Absolutely. And I wholeheartedly agree with that.
I think that's really telling, right? Like the fact that we even are able to draw that analogy and that comparison into this conversation, right? Like the fact that we're talking about some really horrendous shit,
Yeah.
right? Smart Circle is involved in this conversation, and this isn't like us talking about the 8-year-old at T-ball, being an MVP on the same level as LeBron James or Kobe or Michael, right? Like we're not having that kind of conversation here. This is very easy to draw between. And that's what I hope people realize is that, look, are there people that are the right fit for this business? Absolutely. There are definitely people out there that are not good people or that do not have enough integrity and credibility to protect themselves from harming people, right? Yeah, those people exist, man. They're everywhere, right? We live in a very, very diverse world. So this business is not going anywhere. It's going to stick around. It's going to persist. It's going to subside. And people are still going to get involved in it. And people are going to listen to these interviews and go, you know what? F that guy, man. I'm better than him, right? Again, it's the whole thing, right? Like if there's 2 out of the 50 people that I was closely associated with that are still in the business, the other 48 of us are gone. Now, what I will tell you about this, right, and I hope people really take from this part, today, 5 years removed from the business at this point, or 4 years, whatever it is, I don't talk to anyone who is still involved in the business. I talk to almost everyone who worked for me, even if they only worked for me for a few weeks, even if they were one of the people who felt misled, right? I came in, yeah, Dan, you told me it was sales. You told me it was commission only. You told me I was going to work, right? But I didn't really realize it was this much. I had one guy who, when he was working for me, before your documentary, there were others. There were other things that were out there, and we were dealing with this, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, right? There were people already talking about Slave Circle and all of its many, many atrocities. And he came to me with all of this, right? He had the blog printout. He had all of it, and he's like, this is what you're doing. And I said, Nick, no, I'm not. Like, am I going to tell you that those things don't happen? No, I know they happen. I've talked to owners and I've talked to people who have had it done to them. I get it, but that's not what I do here. My business, right, does things the right way. and here we are. And that same gentleman, Nick, reached out to me about 1.5 years ago. He now makes great money. He's got a great job. And he's like, look, man, he's like, you were right. You taught me a lot. And I took what I learned in your business, and now I'm in a much better place. You know what my first thought when I got done with that conversation was? Thank God he blew the business. Because he wouldn't be telling me that. If he had stayed in the business and I promoted him out, he wouldn't be going, hey, Dan, thank God you changed my life. Thank God you did this for me. Thank God you did. That wouldn't happen, right? He'd be on one of your interviews talking about, holy shit, man, my life sucks. This happened, that happened, blah, blah, blah. And that's the general feel that you're going to get from most people out of this business, right? Is that most people took advantage of it. Most people came into this, they got used. They were lied to, they were misrepresented, they were over promoted, and then they ultimately got really screwed. I tried not to ever do that. I tried to really do things in a way that if no matter what, when I walked away, whether it was a customer buying a product from me or whether it was somebody I hired in an interview, when they walk away, like we should better each other, right? We should walk away from this experience and both of us go, hey, that was cool. Like I gained something from that, not the other way around. And unfortunately, it's the other way around. And it's because it's a cult, right? Like that's what happens in cults. If you talk to anybody who didn't make it in Scientology, they hate Scientology. They have nothing but bad things to say about it. Same thing in this business. Now, again, is there an argument to be made that those people should have never been hired in the first place? Fucking course. But why are those people getting hired? Because your business teaches them to do it. So change your hiring practices. Be honest with people. Tell people, look, you're going to work 100 hours a week. You're going to go through about a year in the field. It's going to suck. It's going to be hard. You're not going to make a lot of money. And when you get to ownership, just like any other business on the planet, your first 2 to 3 years are going to be really, really rough. You're not going to make a lot of money. Why? Because you just opened a business. Most businesses lose money the first 2 to 3 years. If you don't have $250,000 sitting in the bank, you don't open a business. Why? Because you probably can't afford to. The same thing applies in this business. If you don't have $250,000 sitting in the bank, guess what? You're never going to just sit and loaf it and collect a paycheck and your business is just going to be turnkey. That's not going to happen. You're going to have to earn it. Earning it is a really big cost that I don't think most people are aware of going into this business. I'm telling you, it's a huge cost. It was 5 years of my life, 120 hours a week, and I missed everything, you know?
Yeah. And they make it sound very easy, right? Because I remember being in a couple, I don't even know what they were, if they were impacts or if they were morning meetings or whatever, where they talked about something like 90% of businesses fail in the first year. The attrition rate continues. If you make it to maybe year 5, then you might make a little bit of money. But in this model, in Smart Circle, we do all this for you. And the success rate is going to be that much better because we give you the clients, we give you the office and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, they don't mention you're not going to make any money as an owner. We got you into this lying to you that you're going to make $75,000 to $100,000, but you're not going to make any money. If you make anything, it's going to your business account. And if someone above you doesn't like what you're doing, and like you said, they're going to sometimes actively try to shut you down. They're going to push your buttons. They're going to confront you. They're going to behave in ways that are absolutely despicable to try to force you to quit your own business, right?
It's especially, I think the most heartbreaking stories that I saw, because again, when you're, I don't want to say when you're at the top, but it's really the truth, right? When you're at the top, when you're a direct promotion of one of these top, NCs or regionals, which I was, right? I was cannibalized, right? My promoting owner blew out of the business. He was kicked out of the business and his office was given to me because they found out that he hadn't been showing up for months. For months, I had been running the office. I didn't care because, again, my goal was to get to ownership, right? So I knew all of these things were going to happen with business. I knew that the chances were my owner was going to suck. I knew that, there's a really good chance that I'm going to have to relocate. I knew that, it's just standard operating procedure for this business that, if you want to get somewhere, you have to be the owner from day one. You got to show up and act like you're an owner. And I did. But yeah, my promoting owner was blown out of the business and given a check for $15,000. And then I took over. Literally, then I was already running the office, but then it was like official, like a week later. But I saw owners that, they're 22, 23 years old. They have no life experiences whatsoever. They're just getting out the door of life, right? Like, it's so scary to me to think of my stepson who's 21, right? And, if God forbid he fell into this trap, it would really fuck his life up. It would drastically fuck his life up. And most people, that's what's going to happen. And that's scary, and those are the heartbreaking stories that broke my heart. Somebody's 22, 23, they listened to all of these things they were told while they were coming to the field. They did all the right things. All they did was follow orders, right? Like they're just listening to their promoting owner and rinsing and repeating over and over again. Now they get to ownership. That same promoting owner and regional that they built all this trust and spent all of this time fighting through the field with, right? Now all of a sudden just turns on them. Hey, you suck, man. Your numbers aren't here. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. Like, we're going to shut you down if you can't get this fixed. How toxic can you be? Could you imagine, if your parents told you when you were a teenager, after you tried sports for the first time and you sucked at it, and then they convinced you to go try it again. And then you go to the next thing and you actually are okay at it, but you're not the best, but you're okay, right? You're enjoying it. You're having fun. And then your parents bring you home after your first game and rip you apart and tell you how you're not the best point guard. Like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Like, you know what? That's it. We're taking this away from you. So wait a minute. Like, I actually enjoy doing this now. But because I'm not doing it your way, like, I don't get to do it at all. And that's what happens. And it's heartbreaking. And a lot of these people I'm still connected with on social media, and I can tell you it impacted their life profoundly for a while. If a prospective employer, after you blow out of the business, calls your owner to try and get a reference check on you, do you actually think that your owner is qualified to do that? That's probably a question people should ask before they get into this business. You know, the amount of owners that I know that, again, weren't like me, right? I came in with experience. So, like, although the mental health issues and, like, you know, the crap that I went through was severely detrimental, right? Financially, it didn't impact me that much. I lost a lot of money, but, like, my life didn't, like, end because of it. You know, I was back to work within a few months. It wasn't, you know, like, life moves on and I was okay. But there's a lot of owners that I know that they didn't have experience before they came into this business, and their experience is this business. And then they don't make it. They blow out of the business for whatever reason, and they can't find work because they don't know how to answer questions. They go to an interview for a marketing position, or they go to an interview for a sales position, or, you know, whatever it is. If that person giving the interview is actually experienced and has done these roles, Smart Circle does not give you that experience.
No.
You're not going to be able to answer questions about how to drive marketing campaigns. You know, again, these were things that I knew outside of the business before I ever came to it. So I was okay. But the average owner, when they leave this business, they're fucked. They've got a 4 or 5 year gap of employment, basically, where they work. And that's how prospective employers are going to look at them moving forward. And, like, again, these are things that just aren't talked about. And those are the things that I hope somebody watching this video, before they go in an interview and decide to take this foray, these are the things you need to think about. You know, these are the things you've got to get through your head and realize, like, what are your real goals? You know, don't listen to what somebody is telling you a goal should be. Like, what the fuck makes you happy? You know, I can tell you at this point in my life, I went back to school and like, you know, in a year, I'm going to graduate and I'm going to be a wildlife biologist. I'm going to chase Florida panthers around the swamps of the Everglades. 35,000 a year, working 5 months a year, right? Like, it's not about money to me anymore. But I found what I'm happy about. You know, now, again, I had other blessings that allowed me to be able to pursue that. But if you're 22, answer that question. You know, don't worry about, like, you know, how you're, dude, just find out what the fuck makes you happy, and find a way to do that every day. Because I can tell you, money comes and goes. And, like, you know, I lost tens of $1,000s in the Smart Circle when I closed. I don't know what was in my account. I think it was like 37,500. You know, like, I didn't take that money. I didn't ask for it. I didn't care. You know, I was ready to cut ties and move on. You know, and I've lost other money in other ventures that didn't work out. And then I made a lot of money in some that did. But I never cared about the money. I did things I enjoyed doing. I didn't enjoy Smart Circle at the end at all.
Yeah. And unfortunately, in Smart Circle, Cydcor, Credico, it is the money. That's the only measure of success. It's the money. It doesn't matter if you're happy. It doesn't matter if you have relationships that are outside the cult. It's the money. And that's the only way to get to happiness.
Those relationships don't last. You know,
no.
I can tell you the vast majority of people I knew in the business were in a relationship with somebody in the business. You didn't marry outside the business. You have relationships outside the business, because nobody outside the business is going to look at what you do day in and day out and think that you're a normal, sane person unless they're in the business. You know, it would be 11:30 at night, 12 o'clock at night, and I'm on the East Coast in Florida, right? But I'm networking with somebody in California because it's only 9 o'clock there. You know, and like, it'd be 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm still up working. You know, going on an hour and a half, 2 hours of sleep every day, you know, but because I loved it. And I loved it. When I first got promoted, I was happy. Things were great. I loved working with Verizon. I loved my market. I loved my guys. I loved everything about it. What I didn't love was the fact that everything that I was told throughout the entire time I was coming through the field, when I tried to do it, it was like all of a sudden not acceptable. Like, well, what do you mean you're taking off on a Tuesday afternoon, you know, to go to your little brother's soccer game. Like, you can't do that. What do you mean? Why can't I do that? Like, it's my business. And I'm hitting numbers. My sales are, I'm the number 2 office in the country for 5, 6, 7 weeks in a row. Like, why can't I take one afternoon off? This is why. Because nobody else in your business is going to look at you taking that day off and think that you earned it. Every single one of your leaders, every single one of your new reps, your admin, they're all going to look at you taking that day off like you shouldn't. And so now that one day off you took has got so much negative backlash, so many things that now you're going to have to go have these critical conversations with guys in the office one-on-one, because it affects them and impacts them. You know why it's affecting and impacting them? Because they're working 90 hours a week for $40,000 a year. That's why. If they weren't there at 8 o'clock in the morning until 10, 11 o'clock at night, do you think they would give 2 shits about you going to golf on a Tuesday afternoon? No. They care about you golfing on the Tuesday afternoon because they're there from 8 o'clock in the morning to 10, 11 o'clock at night. And then team night, and then this, and then that, and all of these other things. So now everything just becomes magnified. I even saw it in AJ's office. And again, AJ was a top owner. He was a regional. Like, he had, 40 of us that were like me running around. He never went to the field. He barely came to his office. And it affected his office. I saw guys and leaders and owners that like just gave up because, they were like, oh, well, if he's not here working 100 hours a week, why am I? But that's what you're told, right? You're told to work the 100 hours a week so that you can get to AJ's level and then not have to work. But then it's all negative. It's like, you can't win, right? Ken Weinraub was a perfect example, right? Like, the guy makes $7.5, $8 million a year, supposedly. I mean, it's another one of these things in the smart circle, right? You never really know what the truth is. I saw some numbers. I can extrapolate from that what I think in 2017 he was doing. But you don't really ever know. But I know this. I never saw Ken not at his office. There were times I drove by his office after I blew out of the business at, 7 o'clock in the morning, and he's there. 9 o'clock at night, he's there. This is supposed to be the guy who takes over for Larry Tenebaum. Again, I think that might be like kind of the urban myth legend that they do, because I heard the same thing about a couple of other people at other periods, but again, if Ken is supposed to be the pinnacle of excellence, right? If he's supposed to be the one that everybody should be trying to be like, well, he's a national consultant making $8 million a year who's still at his office 110 hours a week. So he doesn't go to the field anymore. That's the only thing that changed. Outside of that, everything I saw, he was doing the exact same shit I did as an owner. In his office all day long, interviews all day long, no quality of life, no real family. I spent every day with AJ for like 3 years. I never met his family. The only reason I knew his girlfriend is because she was the admin for the owner that got shut down in my office. Otherwise, I probably would have never met her. That's insane to me. Like, AJ knew more about me than my parents did. Never met his parents. Never. I could not even tell you. I never even saw a picture of them. I don't even know what they look like. That's scary. I have people that work for me now, and like, I know their family. They're part-time employees that work 10 hours a week, and I know their family, right? I spent 50 to 70 hours with AJ for 3 years, relocated my entire life to Philadelphia to go work with him and start this new campaign. And like, I couldn't fucking pick out his mom and dad if you put a gun to my head. That's scary.
Yeah.
But it's probably not a cult.
Yeah, you become the family. Like, you become this business. That's all it is. All right, so my legs are getting numb here almost. So I've only got a couple questions left for you. This has been absolutely fascinating. I would not trade these 2 hours again. This has been great. But I only have a couple questions left. So I want to get back. I know we've talked a lot about the business at large here, but I want to talk a little bit about how you ended up leaving, because you said a couple times today that you kind of did things differently. You were upfront with people, and that kind of got you in trouble a little bit with the higher ups. So was that what eventually led you to getting out? I know you said one of the primary reasons was you missed your daughter's graduation, and that really weighed on you a lot.
4 years ago now, and I still get choked up about it, because my firstborn, but ultimately I left. So I mentioned that there was an assistant manager that came to the field with me on Inspire Energy, right? And, fraud pitch, lying to people blatantly, misrepresenting, talking about cancer of the lungs, and like all of these crazy fear tactics that I'm like, dude, you're just trying to get somebody to switch over their electric. Like, why are you talking about this, right? I got some blowback from that. This guy was one of the guys that was in another top owner's office, and he was sent specifically to me, to try to work on compliance. And 5 doors in, this guy has blatantly lied to every door. These people aren't even buying from him. And most of them I knew weren't even buyers, right? Like, I wouldn't have wasted 30 seconds with these people because I knew that they weren't going to buy anyway. But he's, pulling out article after article that his owner has found in some magazine somewhere talking about the beauty of wind energy, and like, I'm an environmentalist. Again, I'm in school to become a wildlife biologist. I've hunted, fished, camped, everything my entire life. Like, there's nobody that cares about the environment, as much as I do in my life. None of these things were things I talked about. And I literally relocated to Philly because I wanted to work on this campaign. Like, I found out what they were about. Patrick Mahoney, the CEO of Inspire Energy, is actually a really cool guy. Like, I got to meet these guys personally, so I did a lot. I worked on that pitch. I got it developed, and Patrick and Inspire Energy wanted me to direct the business to business side. Again, clients loved me because I did things with integrity, and customers loved us, because I didn't recruit the way that they wanted. And I didn't do the things that, they wanted me to do. 2 days before I was literally supposed to start this campaign, I got a phone call, hey, it's not the right time. AJ's traveling. You've been running the office. We really need you to do that still. Mind you, I'm not getting paid for that, right? AJ's getting the overrides for all of his guys. He hasn't been in the office in 3 weeks, And I struggled to build my own team because, I was really, in my mind, I thought AJ and I were kind of on the same team, and that Ken knew that. And, I had seen this situation in other offices, right? Where, like, an owner is doing something that isn't really on his books, but the upper ups know that that's what's going on. And so you get credit for it, and I was getting credit for it. And then all of a sudden, that all changed. I got that phone call 2 days before I was supposed to transition the business to business and, like, start the campaign, and was told no. Basically, you're not going to get that opportunity. And I'm like, well, why? And, they gave me a lot of lip service, but I knew at the end of the day, it was 100% because they were trying to blow me out of the business at that point. They knew that I was not going to be somebody that ever just promoted people. I was never going to be somebody that ever just showed up and lied and misdirected and manipulated things. AJ did not do that. I did not hear AJ do that to interviews. I listened to a lot of his interviews. I spent a lot of time with his guys, and I felt like he was pretty upfront with people. I think there's a lot of politics that happen at the top level that people just have no clue about. And, I think AJ was given some direction, and he followed that direction, despite the fact that he knew I was pretty much getting fucked. So that phone call, I realized, I had missed my daughter's graduation 3 weeks prior. I haven't seen my family except for one day, literally. I flew home the day before Christmas. So I flew home Christmas Eve. I landed at like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And then I flew out the day after Christmas morning back to Philadelphia. So I spent Christmas Day with my family down here in Florida. That was it. That was the only time I saw for like 3 years. It just all hit me, and I realized like, wow, like I've done all of this and I've been successful. I've made money. I have recognition. I have all these things that like I thought were important. But at the end of the day, I'm going to spend the next 3 to 5 years not seeing my family. And I'm already almost 5 years in, right? So like at this point, what I thought originally was going to be about 3 to 5 years of sacrifice is really going to be about 10 to 12. I don't want to miss another graduation. Like I don't want to, I found out my mom almost died. She was in the hospital, literally on her deathbed. My parents didn't even tell me because they knew like I'm not going to come home. Like I'm not. Sorry, I'm getting upset. It's just this is the part of the business that sucked. I missed out on a lot, and I didn't find out about my mom almost dying until a year ago. My parents didn't even tell me after I blew the business. It literally was a year ago. My mom flipped up. They weren't intending on telling me. My mom screwed up and she mentioned something about almost dying, and I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, when I went to the hospital, I was like, no, Mom, I don't know. What the hell are you talking about? And then I found out in 2017, she went into a deep seizure and was, hospitalized for 3 days. And, they didn't think she was going to make it. And I didn't know about that. That's tough, man. So when I got that phone call and I realized, this is what's going on, I left. I went to the Poconos for 2 days. I literally took a tent, a flashlight, a sack of bread, some lunch meat, and that was it. And I went and hiked the Poconos for 2.5 days and just really thought about life and where I was at, what was going on. And at that point, I made the decision, like, I'm done. Like I don't want to do this anymore. Whatever payoff is wherever it is down the road, it's not worth what I'm putting into it anymore. Like I don't mind working long hours. I work probably 80 hours a week now. My work ethic is pretty off the chain, so I don't care about working hours. That doesn't bother me. But when you're not able to go to your daughter's graduation, like you're not able to, schedule doctor's appointments, like dentist appointments, right? Like these things don't happen. I challenge anybody who goes into an interview to one of these offices to ask that owner when they're in the interview, when was the last time you went to the dentist? When was the last time you went to a doctor? They won't answer you because they haven't been. Their life is 100% tied into this business and nothing else is going to come before that. And those are the things that made me realize, like, wow, man, like, is this really what I want to do? Even if I make it, and that was what the deciding factor was, right? Like, even if I make it and I'm an AJ or a Ken, what does my life look like? And then I thought about the fact that Ken is at his office at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and he's a national consultant. Now a senior vice president, still at his office 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So that's going to be me. No amount of money is worth that, right? Like, do you think Bill Gates lives that life? Do you think that Jeff Bezos lives that life? Like, and that's what they sell you, right? They sell you that entrepreneurs go through this type of struggle. And they're right. I absolutely struggled like that in other businesses I ran and in the one I'm in right now. The difference is there was a payoff, right? Like that time and that investment and that sacrifice eventually got to something. And now that something is paying dividends and return back. You don't own a business. So you're never going to reach that point. And I hope people listen to that last two sentences and they really understand that. You don't own a business and you're never going to reach that point. Ken Weinraub is not Jeff Bezos. He's not Bill Gates. He's probably not even the guy who owns 7 or 8 franchise McDonald's in your local city. He's working his ass off still. He's never home. I looked at the wedding pictures from when he got married down in the Caribbean, and AJ was there. every single person at Ken's wedding was in the business. Every single person. Everyone. No one was there that wasn't in the business. That should tell you something. And it shouldn't tell you that, wow, these guys love each other so much. That's not the way real life works, man. You know, I think people forget sometimes the age-old saying that you keep your enemies, you know, your friends close, your enemies closer. That business is full of enemies, right? Like the cannibalization that happens inside that business is insane. It happened to me, right? Like I was stolen, you know, like they knew I was good and they went and stole me. And my promoting owner didn't get a penny for me. Stu Cooper was technically my original national consultant, right? Because he's who promoted my owner. They never got paid for me. Stu never made a dime off of me because I was never a part of his organization. In fact, Ken would threaten me with that all the time. When I got threatened to get retrained 2 times, both times, he's like, do you just want to go back to Stu? It was like when your parents who are divorced are like, do you just want to go fucking live with your dad now? It was like the same shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's what he was saying to me. Basically was like, you know, if you don't like it, you can go back to shitty Stu and deal with Stu never working and not being here and not doing this and not, you know, all these things, you know. Now, mind you, I never borrowed money, right? Like literally the only money that I ever borrowed in that company was when I relocated to Philadelphia and I moved a team of 10 people to Philadelphia. And I told AJ and Ken, like, this is after Verizon sold out to Frontier. And my business went from 25 grand a week to like 10 grand a month, right? Not my fault. It's because the client was just brutal and had a lot of issues. And, you know, I told AJ flat out, dude, I'm not spending 40 grand to relocate these people. Like that, you guys are going to have to come up with that, you know? And he did. And I paid it back. And it took me less than a month to pay it back. But it was just a principle that, like, I'm not going to come out of the little bit of money I have to do this. Most people didn't have that luxury. Most people, they get into debt. They get opened up as an owner. They can't make it. They can't pay their bills. They can't cover payroll. If they're on the roadshow side, it's even worse because then they've got a whole inventory management control system they've got to deal with that most of them don't know how to deal with, by the way. And the next thing you know, you've been an owner for 3 months and you've got a $30,000 head office debt. How are you ever getting out of that? But again, we're probably not a cult. It's probably not a cult. Probably not a pyramid scheme. Totally legit.
You have talked a little bit about the upside. Like you said, if you're fresh out of college, you have no experience, and you can make $3,000 a week, hey, this could be beneficial for a little while. And, you know, apart from that, apart from learning sales, I honestly don't know what other positives there are to it. You know, you and the long line of people that have come forward have taught me similar things. You know, so, and I know you mentioned the ideal person for this opportunity, quote unquote, is someone who is very cutthroat, you know, someone who is probably a loner, probably doesn't have family or is estranged from their family, probably maybe has some capital saved up, maybe from a savings account or real estate or something like that, as many of these owners have. You know, they own things, or they have wealthy families and things like that. You know, what, I don't know. I guess my main question is for someone who is desperate for work, as many people are today. How do you balance the benefits of maybe getting lucky and making a couple $1,000s a week or a couple $1,000s every 2 weeks with walking that tightrope of, if I get in a little bit deeper, how far can I get in without being totally drunk on the Kool-Aid here?
None. Right. If you go to the pool, you're going to get to the pool party. It's that simple. So if you show up, you're in, right? And you're already in too deep. And that's the best answer I can give to that part of the question, right? Like the right fit is such a small, minuscule part of the population that I can feel very, very confident in saying you're not the right fit. Whoever that person is watching this video right now, you're not the right fit. The fact that you're watching this video means you're probably not the right fit. Because you've got to be willing to just trust, right? Like that whole faith thing is really hard, right? Like it's like being in a real relationship, right? Like how many people are in relationships with a significant other they don't really have faith in, right? Like you can tell they don't have faith in. You know, if they were in the Jack and Rose situation in Titanic, right? Like their ass is getting left in the water, like she's on the door and like you're drowning. Like, that's just And that's most people, right? 99.9% of people are not built for this business. The 0.1% that is the same 0.1% that's built for everything that requires massive, massive sacrifice, right? If you want to become a Navy SEAL, buckle up, right? Like that's not easy. If you want to become a professional athlete, buckle up. That's not easy. Look at Sha'Carri Richardson, right? This poor girl trained, God knows how long in her life and what she sacrificed to be able to make it to the Olympics. And now, because, she did something that 40% of the country is like literally legally allowed to do at this point, she can't go chase her dream. Well, that's Smart Circle, by the way, right? Like you're going to put that kind of effort in, and then, yeah, some arbitrary bureaucratic governing board above you that you have no control over whatsoever is going to decide that your office isn't good enough and you're going to get shut down. Or decide that, like, you're just not making the numbers you should, and so it's time to go on a retrain and you're going to have to relocate. Now, again, I think that we've hinted at this in the interview and in other interviews. I would tell you, I think that all of that is a part of the indoctrination. The retraining, the shutdown, all of those things, because, let's get you involved with somebody who's already drinking the Kool-Aid fully, right? And why would you not, especially when you see this person successful? So, that part is scary to me. And that's what I hope people really shy away from, is understanding that there's a very small percentage of the population that's fit for this business.
Apart from the work ethic, the people that 0.1% of people that you mentioned that are cut out for this, probably not the best people, not the best people in the world either.
Can't be too nice for this business. That whole "you're too nice for this business" Dan thing, that resounded with me, man. And that's the truth. You cannot operate with ethics and integrity in this business. You can't. You will not be successful. You've got to be willing to play that game, and that game is manipulation. That game is control. That game is, really pushing people and manipulating the crap out of them. It's like the things I saw AJ and Ken say to people. It blew my mind, and most of the people that they were talking to, most of the owners that I was around that were in my organization were young. They did not have experience. They had never managed anyone. They had never played office politics before, so they didn't know what was really happening. And again, this is part of the cult part, right? Like if you have sheep and you can keep them believing they're sheep, you're in a pretty good spot. And that's what that business is designed to really do. If you question things, you're going to get ostracized. I promise you. I questioned everything, and most of my questions were met with obsternation. They were not met with acceptance. They were met with, "Why are you asking that? What is that? Why is that important? Well, that doesn't matter. Well, no, it does matter, man, because you know why it matters? I employ 47 people that have to feed their families. And if something happens that I didn't know about, and now one of those 47 people can't feed their family, I'm a piece of shit."
Okay, Dan. So I've been doing these interviews for 3 years. I've done over 50 of them. I've messaged back and forth with and talked to probably several hundred people at this point. And apart from, if we add in the people that are regular watchers and comment on the videos, we're talking about thousands of people. And there's always this debate of, well, what do we do? Is there some way we can influence Sam's Club and Costco? Is there some way we can influence T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon? Is there some better way to get this information out there? I feel like after 3 years, I've done pretty much all I can do to raise awareness of this. In your opinion, having been in the inner workings of this, having been an owner, knowing what owners' kryptonites are, knowing how the systems work, what can we as a culture, not me, not you, but as a culture, what can we do to bring awareness to this, to maybe one day end this? I know you kind of said that it's always going to be around, and I agree. As long as there are people willing to scam other people, this is going to be around. But what can we as a society, as a culture do to at least feel like there's some kind of victory here?
Well, I think the first thing and most important part is anybody watching this video, anybody doing research in general, it doesn't even have to be for this industry or business. It's just in general. Before you make decisions, really sit down and do some research. I think in this day of instant information, we've lost that ability, right? We've lost that ability to sit down and kind of digest through information because we don't have to go look for it anymore, right? It's super easy to find. It's super easy to get. If I want to know, how far away Mars is from Earth, all I do is go to Google and I get my answer in 3 seconds, right? Before I used to have to call 15 astrophysicists and then maybe one of them might know and I had to put effort in. So I don't do that anymore. And this business, oh my God, man. I mean, you want to talk about like the perfect breeding field, right? Like, that's today, ignorance is bliss and the world is very ignorant right now. And so because of that, this business has been able to really capitalize and take advantage of a recruiting market that wouldn't be here normally. So hopefully we can use that weakness as a positive, right? Like as a culture, what I hope people start to do is actually do research, right? Not depend on a Facebook fact checker to just tell you this is, false or real, but like actually critically think through it. Hey, this person said this, this, and this. Now I see that this, and this happened, so I can derive some conclusionary results from that. But we got to start doing that again, and that's what I hope people watching this video do. Like, look, again, I thought I was perfect for this business. Like, I thought this business was perfect for me. I literally went and sought this out. I said, okay, like I just sold a business off. I'm ready for my next venture. What do I want to do? Well, I don't want to have to go out and find a client again, right? I don't want to have to build something from the ground floor up. So I'm going to go back to this business because they've done all that work, right? So I don't have to do all of that. And I wish I would have done more research into what was going to happen once I actually got to ownership. And I thought I did. I thought when I made, the owner that originally hired me turn his laptop around and show me his direct deposits and show me how he did payroll and show me what his reps were making, like I thought I had done my part. No, I just made sure that he was actually paying his people, right? There was nothing else that I found from any of that information about the actual way Smart Circle operated. So learn that, learn what is going to put you in a position that 5 years from now, the decision you're making or the thing that you're going through actually matters. Right? That 5 years from now, you can look back on it and go, wow, I'm glad I did that. I grew and I learned something from it. Money is easy, man. Money is easy. There's millionaires in prison. It's not hard to make money. It's really hard to make a good life. And that takes a little bit of commitment and attachment. So I hope that's what we do as a culture is we start realizing that businesses like this are going to continue to prey on people as long as we don't have good information out there. As long as we don't have real people coming up and talking, and again, I think it's great what you did. I just wish that there were more people that had interviewed that weren't 2 or 3 month employees, because that impression of this business is so shielded. I wish more owners like myself and people that actually got into this business to a deeper level would come out and say something about it, because I don't feel bad about what I had to say at all. I don't think that I besmirched or tarnished Smart Circle in any way. In fact, I would tell you that I probably defended them more than I attacked them, because I think that there are some things about the business that are really positive. The problem is what you have to be willing to give up for that positivity, and that payment to me is not worth it. That Faustus deal is pretty bad. It's a pretty bad one. Because we both know, right? Like there's going to be people that still watch these videos that go to Glassdoor and see that the place they're about to go interview at has got 74 negative reviews, and they're still going to show up and they're still going to listen to what this guy has to say or this girl has to say and go, okay, maybe this is the right fit for me. I'm telling you, it's not. I'm telling you, it's not. I feel very, very confident in saying that pretty much anyone who is going into one of these interviews, it's not for you. You've been misled probably, and unless you take your due diligence and really know what you're bringing to the table to pick through it, you're going to have the exact same experience that 99.9% of people have in this business, which is not good, and it's going to be some, indeterminate time of sacrifice that ends with you leaving with nothing. Very few people make it out of that business. I can tell you that. I do know some, and I do know people that did it, but that number is so astronomically small. And even people I know that left on good terms, they didn't leave with everything that was theirs. I'll tell you that. You shouldn't be scared to do something because somebody else had a bad experience. That's never a good way to live life.
Right.
I think when you have 3.5 years of a pretty synonymous story coming out every single time, you got to pay credence to that. And that's what I hope people can take away from my interview is that, like, look, you can go look me up. I don't care. There's pictures still up of me with AJ and Ken and all kinds of things all over the place. My glass doors are still up for Vision Innovations. You can still find me on social media. I haven't owned that business in 4 years, but I was good. I was really good at what I did. I was a top owner. And I still didn't make it. And it's because it's just not a business built to make it. It's a business built to wring you out like a rag and get every bit of, sweat, blood, and tears they can out of you. And then when that rag is dry, it's going to get discarded. That's just the way that business is. So know that going into it. And if you're really adamant that you are going to be one of those 2 out of 50 that made it, right? One of those 2 out of 50 that's still in the business, God bless you, man. Just make sure you're prepared. Don't go to battle without armor. Don't go to battle without some weaponry, and be in a good spot, because it's going to drain you and it's going to be a ride. Some people really enjoy it. Those few people that are out there that really enjoy it, God bless you, man. More power to you. I couldn't, I couldn't lie to people. I couldn't deceive people just to promote them and get an override. It just wasn't what I was about. And I didn't chase it like that. Most people will, and if you're one of those people, great. Just please, for the most part, especially if you're in the business right now, just be honest with people, man. It's not hard. I can tell you, and I promise you, most of us that were being honest on the Verizon campaign were doing very well, very, very well. So you can do it, and you won't see a dramatic drop in retention. In fact, I would tell you, most people you hire will stick around longer because they knew what they were getting into to begin with. When you tell people one thing and do something else, it's not going to be well. It's just not going to go well in the long run at all. But I don't regret it. That's the thing, is I don't regret it. I did it my way, and unfortunately that way didn't work out. But just understand that if you're that person going into the business saying, I'm going to do it my way and I'm going to be the one that's different, there's no different. You don't get that option. You don't own your business to the degree to do that. And they control it, so you're going to have to fight that battle. I fought it for 4 years and then just gave up. Like it was exhausting. If you want to make it, you can't fight that battle. You've got to be willing to just follow the line.
Thank you so much, buddy. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and for your ongoing support. Maybe we'll see you next year. God bless.